Right, okay, folks, welcome to another nice and nasty podcast. I can't remember what number it is, 15, 16, something like that. And we are utterly blessed with retro gaming royalty. I've got the wonderful Mr. Gary Penn. How the hell are you, mate?
All the better for hearing that. I should have worn a crown. A crown of some sort of... That'd have been
No,
really
I mean,
classy.
I don't mind admitting, Gary. I mean, I've been doing YouTube for 2013, and it was I've probably been like sort of. I don't like calling it interviews. I call it just having a blather, catching up with people. And I've probably been doing that part of it for about 10 years. And you were one of the first. For Jeff Minter, Gary Penn, need to get these guys in the channel. And I think a couple of times, every time, to be fair, every time I reached out to you, you'd say, "Oh, I'm really busy, but give me a shout in April, whatever." And it just time wore on, and I never ever managed to get you. But obviously, you were a gent by coming on for the charity stream back in November. We raised a whopping.
I remember that.
That was about £2,500 we got for two really good charities.
Nice one. That's cool.
So no, thank you. Just before I start, thank you very much for taking time out to do these things. So I mentioned retro gaming royalty. That is a phrase which really annoys the tits out of me when people, retro gaming. People don't talk about retro films or retro music.
No, I totally agree. I assume it's to do with the fact that they're so markedly, technically different. I mean, I know you get black and white films and you get films without sound, and you get that kind of weird, almost stop motion vibe right at the beginning. But equally, they feel like you can see the progression. It doesn't feel. Whereas I would imagine if you're fresh to this stuff, and you look back and you're looking at a game with ASCII characters, you'd be looking at going, "What the fuck is this? Is this like an animated cave painting? I mean, what is it?" So I kind of half agree and half I'm on the fence, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is because I think it's a weird thing to sort of say. Well, you get it with some other things like retro clothing, but that's not media. You don't get retro music.
Yeah, no, you don't. You don't. If you say that you like,
I've never really thought about it before, but and also where does retro begin and end, and whose retro is your retro the same as my retro? Because my retro goes back to 70s. Which is literally things like computer games with ASCII characters.
Yeah,
you get other people to go retro, which is PlayStation 1. What?
Well, you'll be the same as me. You've probably got guys that work for you or with you who were born after the PlayStation came out.
Oh god, yeah, I know people.
Is terrifying.
It's the weirdest thing.
It's funny. I don't know. I can never remember where I get my news from, but I think I read something on the internet, and they're saying that they're now encouraging people to start buying physical media again because,
really,
because apparently a lot of these like streaming services or Netflix and Disney, it could literally get to a point where if you decide I really fancy watching Jaws 2 tonight, it's not available.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. It's physically not out there.
It's the same with games. You see it with the Nintendo eShop shutting down, and you had these swathe of articles talking about games you must get before the eShop shuts down. And I haven't used my 3DS for a while. For example, I've got a Japanese one somewhere, and it's got some really nice little games in it. I'm hoping they're still installed, because if they're not, that's it. They're gone. And that really galls me, because I know legally speaking, technically, strictly speaking, you're only buying with a disc or whatever, a tape or even vinyl, you're buying the right to, you actually own the tangible media. You don't own the intangible part of it. You're just borrowing that bit, as it were. And all that stuff's a bit kind of So I don't know. I'm not a massive. I get edgy with them. I still buy physical, just because I find it a lot easier to share among the house, for example. So we've got a couple of Switches in the house, and we play stuff together. But equally, there are games that don't work like that, and then you're kind of fucked if you've got a digital version. I can't share that. I mean, you've got Steam Family Share, which is pretty handy, so that's good. We use that a lot, and that's a good thing. But yeah, I mean, so we've got carts. There are games that my kids bought that I don't buy because they're buying it, and why do you want two copies of it anyway? And we're sharing them about the house, but I don't feel bad about that at all. But as a kid, you grew up sharing stuff because you couldn't afford shit, so you have to share stuff. You share everything, music, books, games, toys. You'd share everything, and it's a weird. I always find such a weird thing. You've got the way intangibility and tangibility have such a people. I mean, they try to map tangibility onto intangibility in terms of ownership, as it were, but equally they're so very different in that, this one tangible thing could be unique and it could not be copied in any convenient means. I mean, these days it can be scanned and 3D printed, sure, but it's not the same thing. Whereas your intangibles, they can be copied, 100% perfect. And that's quite a weird thing. Where's the value? I found that really weird. There was a weird phase years ago where I was looking at the idea of how tangibility would become so much more valuable as we get older, because intangibility was starting to lose its value almost because it was so easy to. I mean, obviously, the making, as someone who makes stuff in a digital medium, there is a great deal of effort involved. There's physical effort. To make something intangible exist in a kind of pseudo physical form. But then I get these moments where you get hung up on this beautiful idea of this being kind of these mirrors to this other universe, and virtual space is like an alternative reality that's out there, and we've got the means of accessing it through receivers and broadcasting. So something's broadcasting from virtual space, and we're picking it up with our receivers on this end of it, and you can interact with virtual space, which is this space that can exist. I mean, it sort of exists in other forms, like a book, for example, but the interface is quite clunky. But you kind of have to go, because you have to assemble the words and kind of translate almost. I think you have a much more vivid picture. But you can also get it with video games as well in a different way, because you've got that illusion of touch where you're trying to assemble, three senses. You've got the audio, visual, and tactile. And you kind of bringing those three things together, and you do get that amazing experience where you feel like you're not physically here. And it's kind of, there are things like flow and so on, but it's something more than that. It does feel like you've transcended into another space. And as somebody who's done a few pharmaceuticals over the years, there are incredible parallels between the two things. It's quite phenomenal. And you don't get that with all games. I find it with sort of realistic games. I find those harder to get sucked into. Whereas some of the more abstract stuff, whoa, you can really, but it's one of the reasons I like old films, because they are clearly somewhere else. And I love that idea. Why wouldn't you want to go somewhere else? I don't want to go, I don't want to be here. The whole point of reading a book or watching a film or listening to music or playing a game is to be transported to that virtual space. And you think, that's such a magical fucking thing to be able to do. But partly to be able to, there are people who naturally do this so well. I think Minter's actually one of those where, he's got his groove and his style, but I think he's so. I spoke about this for Doc's Paul Doctor's documentary he's doing. He's doing it. Well, not documentary, it's a film.
Yeah, the Heart of Neon. Yeah.
And it's when he was asking me questions, one of the reasons I agreed to do it was just that Jeff is, because all the coders back then were kind of into what they were doing, but there were a few of them, and Jeff was one of them. Who was just into it in a very different way. He just lives and breathes that shit in a way that I don't think most coders do. There are others, and I can't think of any offhand. I think it's because he does it in such an expressive way, and also because it's such a young medium. It's like, in terms of expression, it's Play's been around for donkey's years. I mean, longer than stories. But stories we've managed to have in as a means of expression through all sorts of stuff over the years. Books and plays and films now, of course. But play, yes, we've had games and play, but we've not expressed through them in the same way. And it's such an amazingly recent phenomenon, and also such a weird thing to do. It came up when I was trying to think about the stuff to kill and keep, and the implications of that. And that's where you start thinking, God, this is such a young, and the distance we've got to go. Because one of the kills. Is something, because I'm not a massive fan of. So, for example, you get people who go, if you had to get rid of an insect, and it's like, get rid of wasps. And I'm one of these people who says, don't fucking mess with this shit. You've got this ecosystem. Don't fuck with it. Leave it alone. Yeah. I also don't like the idea of. So I found that bit harder than the I found that the two aspects of it differently harder. The keep stuff was hard because there were so many things you want to keep. And also depends how seriously you take this idea that you're stuck in a space. Is it just a sort of this sort of metaphorical idea that, what three things would you idolize enough to, maybe put on pedestals or whatever? And part of me went that route. And then I ended up with this idea that, well, no, I'm into this idea that I'm going to play these things for the rest of my fucking life, however long or short that might be. So I picked things that didn't necessarily fit with that. And then with the killing, I found that so hard because I don't want to.
Did you really? Yeah, I think if I was
soup, it's like. In fairness, I only managed to figure out two. I could not figure out a third. And the two I've picked for two radically different reasons, and only because the first one I picked because I was trying to find something to hate, as it were, and sort of expunge, which I've managed to find something that for me, it's a particular thing that I don't like. So I've got, for me, this is the baby Hitler of a genre. The other one I picked because I'm kind of curious to know what effect it would have. But then I got really stuck for a third one. Whereas the opposite was true with the keeping stuff. It's like, so much stuff you can take. What are you going to pick?
It's interesting because it's easy to kind of think, oh, that was a shit game, whatever. Was it Rock and Bolt on the C64s? I think that scored like the lowest score. Then I was thinking, like, Jeff has recounted quite a few times that the game that inspired him to actually start coding was Asteroids. It was called Asteroids by S. Munnery. Yeah. And he says it was so shit. I mean, you Google it. I think it came out in the VIC-20, and he said it was so shit that he thought, I can fucking do better. And then he's now he's had a lifetime career out of it, all because he won games. So if that shit game never existed, we might have never had Jeff, But
quite. No, I totally agree. It's like wasps. You get rid of wasps, and then you suddenly find, oh fuck, we've got another problem on our hands. It's similar to that idea of introducing species, in the wrong place, like rabbits is a classic example in Australia. But it's just such a hard thing to do. And it's also because I've softened a lot over the years. So I think if you'd have asked me, during the Zzap days, for example, I'd have probably had the opposite problem. Probably been parallel problem. But I'd been going, oh, there's so many games I hate and should die horribly. But, you get older, you have kids, you grow up, and you realize, Jesus, life's too short for
you were a bit harsh.
Hating anything. Yeah. And I don't. Sometimes when you do go back and review these things for whatever reason, there's all sorts of reasons why. Sometimes I don't do it very often, but there are reasons that I sometimes need to go back and look at the stuff I've done, and I feel so bad sometimes looking at that stuff, and I don't like the feelings I get from looking at old stuff that I've done, particularly the fucking mean stuff. And I think, what a shit! I mean, what an absolute fucking shit.
But getting back to what I went completely off tangent. Video anyway. So apparently you want to go to CX and start stockpiling up the DVDs. So I've been going through and thinking I pop in there every couple of weeks, and you're getting Blu-rays and DVDs for like 50 pence and all that. And I picked up London 2012 Olympic Games for £1.50 because I love mathematics. So I've actually been the last couple of nights.
But then the closing ceremonies are really good.
Oh, even the opening ceremony was just something else.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was talking to a guy at work about it a couple of days ago, and I said, I've been watching the Olympics for London 2012. And he went, no, fuck off. 2012? I went, oh yeah. He went, no, that wasn't 12 years ago. I went, it was.
It was.
Absolutely no day. I said, it fucking was. And I got my phone up. I went, you're fucking joking. It went 12. I mean, I can't believe where has time gone. It's just like, it passes in a blink of an eye. It's absolutely terrifying.
It does. It's quite shocking.
And there was one of the first programs I got from the Commodore 64 was a thing called Music Maker. And you had this
was that the Quicksilver one or
no? It was a plastic keyboard that you actually clipped on top of the keyboard.
Oh, was that Commodore one?
Yeah. It was released by Commodore.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, and one of the tracks was When I'm 64 by the Beatles. And I remember at the time listening to the lyrics and thinking, 64, that is like a lifetime away.
I'll be dead before I get to that.
Now it's like 8 years away. It's like, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite that. It's just weird. But equally, I don't know what you're like with time, and time for me is just I don't know. It's everything feels like it's running in parallel to a certain extent, even though I've forgotten loads of stuff from the old days.
Yeah.
And sometimes they feel like other lifetimes. It's like, but you still feel like I've lived 3 lifetimes, not in some, you know, rebirth kind of bullshit, but just there was that massive chunk at the beginning, and then it shifted entirely and changed, and you kind of feel like there's massive eras within your life. Fucking hell, it's quite amazing.
Insane. Yeah. So how long were you with Zzap magazine then, Gary? Because you joined right at the very start, didn't you? You were there.
I did. I was on the launch. Yeah. And it strikes me as weird that I wasn't there as long as I thought I was. So it was. I think we moved down either end of '84 or beginning of '85. Because the first issue I think came out April, and it was cover dated.
I think it was May 1985. I think it was May '85.
Yeah, so you get the issues are always 1 month ahead.
Well, you probably wrote it in April, yeah.
Yeah, March even, or even Feb. Yeah, because we had to sort of acclimatize, and we'd never done anything like that before, and Chris had never done anything like that before, and he wanted to use, gamers over writers, but they had to be able to write. So there was a degree of, and we were quite young and arrogant, so that made it awkward for him, and he was quite dad/teacher-like, and of course you're rebelling against that to a certain extent. But I was only there from then until I think it was mid '87. It was only like 2.5 years, which it always seems like such a long time. I mean, it felt because of the intensity of the period and the amount of stuff we did and the change you experienced. That's one of the other weirdest things about living now. I mean, I'm assuming it must have been a bit like that years ago, but change is occurring so fantastically quick that, in terms of a species, I mean, AI being a case in point, I'm not entirely sure how we deal with that, because I wasn't that worried about AI until I'm not even necessarily worried about it. I'm more concerned about how you start to perceive what is real and what is not, because up to that point I'm going, oh, it's AI, yeah, that looks AI, yeah, blah blah. And then this video came on I think it was on TikTok or maybe a reel, and it was a kid had filmed. It was brilliant. It was some town he lived in the States. He filmed all this tumbleweed, and it looked fucking amazing. I was going, oh, that is so cool. And then I stopped while I was watching it, thinking, oh, hold on a minute, is this real? Because there was so much tumbleweed, and of course I've only ever seen it in films. I've never seen it in real life. You see 1 or 2 pieces tumbling across. There's that whole cliche, of course, of a piece tumbling across to imply that, oh yeah, that fell flat. But there's a whole town was covered in this stuff, and it's prickly as fuck apparently, which I did not realize. And it was the other way around. So I actually thought the real thing was fake, which made me realize, Jesus, we are definitely going to hit this point where, because you must have seen those brilliant videos where someone's got AI to do the Trump and Biden and sometimes Obama voices, and they're gamers and they're playing games. It's so good. It's so funny.
Yeah.
And they are just like true gamers, but the voices are really good. I mean, they're better than an impressionists could ever do, and they're convincing enough. And that was kind of quite creepy. But now it's just like I've get at this point. I have no idea. So as a former journalist, you're kind of used to checking stuff, and you'd always have this thing where you would have 3 independent sources to verify these if you had a fact of some description. How do you do that now? Because the first thing I do, of course, with the tumbleweed stuff is go online and try and verify it. And that made me think, how fucking work you would have to do on a day-to-day basis just to verify anything. We're going to hit that point pretty quickly by the end of the year, probably. And I don't know what you do about that. I've got no idea. And part of me, there's the nerd in me, and the kid in me is like, oh, this is so cool. And then there's the grown-up in me, which is like, oh, Jesus, this is so bad.
Yeah.
I think there's those Trump pictures doing the rounds, and like Trump he was mingling with black people, and the idea was that it presented him as like, no, I do like the blacks. And you look at these pictures going, but I can't imagine ever doing that. And of course they would turn to be fake, and it was some DJ or something did it, and said, yeah, I just did it, and if people fall for it, that's their problem. And I don't know, you're portraying an image of a man, and it's I don't know. Just the implications of that. Yeah, I mean, it's hit that point for me where I can't remember the last. I think the last time I was not necessarily freaked out, but kind of like, you know, uh, blinded almost, or stunned by the change of technology. Probably was video games when they first, and you first, because your TV was just your TV, and we had a black and white TV back then. And I don't think we had a remote. I think we were the remote. And you're watching stuff on the telly, and it's 3 channels, and it's a few hours a day. That's it.
Yeah,
Just insane to say that out loud. And then you get this thing that kind of takes over the TV. And I mentioned the virtual space earlier. That's what it kind of felt like. It felt, yeah, I've got this receiver and I've got the thing, and I'm gonna and you did have to tune in as well.
Yeah,
I'm gonna tune in to virtual space. Oh, I'm there. And that for me was because your mind's going mad because you're a kid also, so you're even more imaginative and you're thinking about all the things that may occur from that. And then over the years, everything else seems to be an iteration of that, and it's cool. Even phones, I sort of feel the connection. But AI for me is like one of those fucking paradigm shifts where you're like, well, I thought I saw this coming, but maybe I didn't, or certainly to that extent. So it's phenomenal stuff. So I don't know, but I guess it's like all good tools. A good knife in the right hands is a beautiful tool that can be used to make amazing things. It can be sculpting, it can be cooking, it can be all sorts of stuff. And in the wrong hands, it's a death tool.
Yeah.
I
mean, we've reached the stage now where you can download an app for free, and I mean, I took a picture and I just tried it, and like. I was still, it was going to show me old, which wasn't that hard to do. It wasn't that much of a difference, but I looked like bloody Gandalf, and I showed it to the work, and you would not know that wasn't you wouldn't know that wasn't a real person.
Yeah,
because it's out there, and
a lot of those upscaled 4K AI videos are really quite cool because they have this creepy kind of. They have a demeanor about them, they're kind of an ambience about them that reminds you of old stuff you've seen, but of course they're pure and smooth, and it's just really kind of unsettling. It's not uncanny valley stuff. It's sort of either side of it almost. It's very peculiar, but I don't know. It's because it's not like a gun. A gun is built pretty much for one purpose and one purpose only. It's for killing something. I mean, it's not, that's it. And a knife, on the other hand, has many other purposes. So, guns in that respect for me, that they have no value, whereas a knife has multiple values. Unfortunately, one of them is evil, but it comes down to the user. And AI is a bit like that. I mean, in terms of this, there is this tool that's going to be fucking amazing. I mean, they're using it for surgery, for science and biology and so on to help identify these things because it can shortcut it. But yeah, the power of but humans are like that. Humans are amazing at being able to, and this is where play comes into it. It's a creepy thing where the power of play is the way that it can be used to find out new things and explore and experiment. And playful people are usually the best scientists or the best in other industries that aren't necessarily creative because their minds aren't closed to the possibilities. And it's the fact that they see things in such a playful way. It's like, what if we did this? What if we did that? And it's ridiculous ways of doing things. But it's where a lot of inventions come along, from that playful spirit. And you can see that emerging with AI, where people are just doing some incredibly cool stuff that's going to become commonplace. And I don't know where that leaves us. I don't know where that leaves me. I don't know where it leaves any of us on any level, professional level, or even just as a human interacting with other humans who may not even be human. It's fuck. So yeah, it's. I think it's the only other tech I've seen in my lifetime. But having one of those in your lifetime, that's pretty fucking cool. Yeah. Like had 2 of them. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, you're still obviously involved in the sort of the game making industry. So does new tech and new technologies, VR and that, does that still excite you?
In all honesty, there was a text that I would say it's easy to say it's never excited me. That would be bollocks. It used to when I was younger, and you sort of realize, and because I was such a sponge with games and tech, you're trying to you're finding all the tech at the time, and trying to find every piece of it because you just want to experience it and see what it's like and what's on it. You sort of realize really quickly that it's not the tech that's important. I mean, as a medium, yeah, but it's not the quality of the paper that makes the book a good book to read. Within reason. But it's not, it's not there. Actually, I would say there are books I've had that have been typeset really badly and make it harder to read. I've had books that have been typeset beautifully, that have been much more pleasurable to read. But even so, it's by and large the tech is to a certain extent irrelevant, and I felt like that for a long time. And in fact, we did a lot of games at Denki where we deliberately targeted shit tech because it was just a fun thing to do. And you see it. You mentioned retro earlier. You see it these days again with a lot of games that just use retro styling, and they're interpretive, which is I'm fine with that. They don't always. You're playing and going, well, as somebody who's experienced this and has the muscle memory and the kind of mental capacity to inherently remember this in such a deep way, you've not got it right. But it's an interpretation. That's fine. It's someone's in the same way that someone paints something or uses another medium to express or capture, a vibe. So that aspect of it I quite like, and I quite like the idea you've got this shorthand for that kind of thing. But equally, I don't like too many pigeonholes. I mean, they're useful to make stuff, pigeonholes. But then again, I think one of the reasons for having those pigeonholes is so you can break them. And again, it's part and parcel of the joy of creativity is you set up these limitations and then you break them.
Yeah.
So tech for me, the less limiting it gets, the worse it gets to a certain extent, because you do end up with a degree of paralysis. You don't end up with that friction that you need to force you to think about what you might do to break this. And I think playful people are like that, whether they are outwardly creative or not. If they're playful, they're that kind of spirit that says, I want to fuck with this. And you see it all the time. You see it with memes. You see it with TikTok and all the reels and stuff that are out there. There is a playful spirit out there that has been harnessed, or has been people are harnessing the tech to be playful in ways that I could not have imagined as a kid. And I kind of envy that because I'm not in a position. I don't have that kind of. It doesn't have that. I will reach for the tech and express myself through that tech. I'm not as close to it as I need to be because it is a tool, but I don't have quite that same sense of wonder, I guess, that somebody who's grown up into it would have. Whereas if you've grown up with it as being, it's just a thing you use, it's no big deal.
Yeah. Have you seen are you aware of the Pico 8?
Yeah. It's been on for a while.
I was quite late to the kind of party. And I got myself a little gaming handheld, and it came with this Pico 8 thing on it, and I bought it. It's like 15 quid, and it's absolutely fantastic.
It's charming. It's charming as fuck. It really is.
As somebody was asking me what it was, I was trying my best to describe it. I says if there was a platform that allowed you to program arcade games that look like arcade games, because every Pico 8 you could quite literally stick in a cabinet and people would play it. It's like I don't know where you would kind of pitch it. It's maybe between a Commodore 64 and I don't know, an NES or something.
It's got vibes of a lot of things. It's got VCS vibes. It's got 64 vibes. It's not Spectrum vibes actually, because it's got that chonk to it, which I quite like. That classic, and even Atari actually, Atari 800. It's got that kind of there's a type of console/computer. It definitely got that kind of feel they managed to capture, and it has that consistency running through it, which I think is beautiful as well.
Aye, and it's because it can run on like anything. It's got the kind of the grunt behind it. So when you play, there's a guy that's been programming all these arcade conversions, and they're just absolutely sublime, like Phoenix and all that, and even Defender, and it looks like Defender, and it's got the kind of the colours. I don't know how many colours it can display, 16 or something, but they're really, really bright, vibrant.
Yeah,
and it's beautiful. It's an absolute beautiful kind of system.
Yeah. A friend of mine's he sent me a thing today. He's been tinkering with some ideas, and it was nice to see because he could just send me a web link. Have a quick look at it and go, actually, I'll look at that right now because it's a web link. Oh yeah, cool. It's really cute. He's got stuff running around. You're like, this is great. And again, but I think it's that joy of expression where you get, and it's one of the beautiful things about middleware. Although it's one of the things I mentioned, Jeff's got that. It's one of these people one of these coders, and there are others out there, as I say, who just, they're so fucking in tune. There's this strange connection between the brain. It runs through their fingers and gets interpreted into code, and they just know how to make shit happen. I was always terrible at that.
I'm gonna throw out Sean Southern as a name. He's like a kind of Jeff Minter. He's so in tune, and everything that he did was just phenomenal.
That's true, and even the stuff that was, because we used to play Kickstarter a lot, which is quite manky, and it's one of his first games, so not too surprising. But yeah, there was something kind of fundamentally that gripped you compared to, I mean, plenty of other manky looking games at the time, but there was something about that one in particular that kind of had a sincerity to it, I guess. But yeah, I think that weird connection that some people have between, I mean, the sculptors have it and the musicians have it, and I kind of envy to a certain extent musicians when you see them play so expressively. You know, it's part of them. It's an extension of them, and I think middleware's been good for that because it's allowed people to just get stuff done, which I think is beautiful. So even Pico 8 to a certain extent, there's a degree of middleware there. Yeah. I think the bit we're missing is we don't quite understand what it is we're making, because it's not like storytelling that's been around for millennia as a means of expression and entertainment. So there's kind of lots of theories about how that works. So there's there's a repetition in there. I know from working on magazines that repetition is really important for learning and for progressing and improving. And particularly when you're forced with a timeline to get stuff done, I think it's also quite important. But we're kind of lacking some of that inherent understanding, and you get some scholars who go, for me, a bit too deep. Because, you know, if you're a sculptor or a musician, for example, yes, some people are interested in music theory, and yes, some people are interested in how rock works. But by and large, most people the people who are most expressive, you know, a sculptor, for example, with the clay and so on, there will be certain techniques and stuff that we'll need to know in order to be able to manipulate the clay. But they don't necessarily give a shit about the science of the clay or any low-level stuff. And I think we're kind of missing that mid-level. Middleware has helped to a certain extent, but I think we're missing that mid-level, not even vocabulary, but means of express, the repertoire. That's the word I'm after. We're missing that kind of mid-level repertoire that you can talk to people about other stuff. And we have, you know, these words and terms like mechanics and gameplay and stuff that get thrown around, but I don't know. I don't always find them particularly useful, and I don't find them particularly useful if you're trying to. Because I'm also a great believer in that anyone should be able to do it. And if you're trying to explain something to someone who's never done it, it's really hard because you're just talking like you're just talking some nerdy language that just no one understands. It's like, I don't know. As a means of expression, and I also think you should be able to do it because I like board games as well and card games, and I think if you are going to express yourself through play, you can do that with any medium that you've got to hand. It's just you learn how to use that medium in order to express yourself and the concept or whatever it is that of play that you're trying to get across. And it just becomes more, I guess, the granularity, the finesse becomes greater with virtual space, because you can do anything, which is quite cool. But you do it with tokens all the time. You do it with board games and board game tokens. You sort of rule out certain things, and gravity is always a great one for. You don't care about gravity in a card game unless you're playing in a position where the card's going to get lost. But you just care about the tokens and the numbers and the symbols that they represent, and within the rules of what you're doing. Same with another example would be a romance on TV. You know, gravity is a given, but in a video game, that can make all the fucking difference. And how you use that gravity, and you are playing God to a certain extent, because you go beyond simple sort of storytelling and other means of expression, because you are really from the ground up in a position where you can completely redefine everything. But at the same time, the more you redefine and the more you change, the harder it is for other people on the other end who've never experienced what you're going through. So when Jeff goes through this, I think sometimes to a certain extent, he's doing this thing, he's locked into his thing, he's doing this, he knows what he's seeing, he's visualizing it in his brain, it's running, he's exchanging, he's putting it out there through his code. And then, of course, if you're not in the same headspace as him, I mean, literally, you're not going to get it. And you see it all the time with all sorts of media, not just games.
We'll not mention Mama Llama.
Yeah.
To be fair, Jeff has actually kind of come out and said, "Yeah, that was a mistake. I was just." What was your take on it? I know Zzap kind of panned it. What was your take on the
It was,
game at
I
the
found
time?
it hard for me as, well, I like most of Jeff's stuff up to that point as well.
Yeah.
So he'd done some garbage, and I really did not like his version of Defender. It was terrible because I was really into Defender. So I didn't like that. So it wasn't like I liked everything he'd done. And I liked some things more than others that he'd done. And there were things like Laser Zone, for example. There was something really quite interesting and cool about that. But at the same time, I was kind of missing something. Hellgate was one of those ones where it kind of caught it for me. So Laser Zone, it had to, Hellgate would not have existed without Laser Zone. So, you know, you need these kind of failings along the way, as it were. But
Yeah.
Laser Zone's interesting. There's some stuff that's interesting in there. And, you know, his takes on Centipede, with Grid Runner and Matrix. I really liked those at the time because they were like Centipede, but something more intense and interesting. And he put these little, you know, little quirks in there. And I think that's that beauty of, you get, you know, this common accusation of people, oh, it's just a copy of that. But it isn't just a copy of that. And you get that often where someone says it's just this, it's just that. And I get that as humans, we can't help ourselves going, oh, it's got 4 legs and a tail, therefore kind of looks like a dog. Oh, that's kind of like a dog. Fine. I get that shorthand is really important. But at the same time, you know, that level of dismissiveness, it's too easy to boil stuff down into the same fucking soup. And you just end up with everything being sludge.
Yeah, people, for whatever reason, people they like to pigeonhole anything. If you tell them you went to see a band at the weekend, or they're mod, or they're ska, or blues, people like to. Can we not just have something that lives on its own? We insist on labeling things, you know, and that's.
Yes. I mean, they're handy shortcuts for all sorts of reasons, but I don't know, it's because it never helps me if somebody says, I saw it. You take the band, for example, if you said you saw this band, I wouldn't be interested in knowing, is it a blues band? Is it this band? I would want to know, is it like anything else? And if it's like anything else, what's it like? So I can kind of zone in on what it is, because I know, when I was younger, it wouldn't quite have been the same case, but you know, there's so much diversity within each of those. Blues is a great example, actually. I was never into blues at all. And jazz is another one. And poetry is another one. There's 3 things I really cannot get into. But I'm a great believer these days in gateways, where you just find a gateway thing that allows you to realize, I see what's going on here. And you take those steps of learning. So I've come across blues stuff over the years. I thought, I didn't realize it was blues. Cool. And that starts, you know, opening up your heart. And the same with jazz. I've more recently realized this stuff that I didn't realize was jazz is jazz. It's just I associated jazz with all this weird shit from the 60s. Of course, some of that stuff doesn't sound as weird as it did. And I mentioned that because something like Mama Llama, it could have been flawed seriously, but equally there are aspects of that. I should really go back and look at it. I haven't looked at it probably since the Zzap review. But, you know, there could be something in there that was effectively ahead of its time, or it could be something he was trying to do that he just expressed, not even badly or wrongly, just it wasn't as coherent a clarification of the vision he was trying to convey. I don't know. I just felt a terrible game. It just felt like a mess. It didn't feel because I know also again from making stuff, the kind of actual making stuff is generally not too bad, but the editing of that stuff and then the sharing of that stuff, the finishing and then the sharing, that's really hard. So starting, you know, pulling yourself together to actually start something, that's challenging in itself. I think finishing stuff is really hard. There's a period in between which is great fun because you neither started nor finished, so yay, anything goes. But if someone says you got to finish this, you know, being able to say, and I learned this the hard way from doing magazines, because you cannot fail. You have to finish. You just got to figure out, well, how am I going to finish? Yeah, but it's not going to be. It doesn't matter. How are you going to finish? And then beyond that, you've got to share it with someone and give it to someone. And again, you learn this from doing a magazine, and you learn this from making games, and you learn this from if you're a musician and so on. Anything you're doing that's going to be shared with somebody, and that's a really hard thing to do. It gets easier, but it never gets easy. I don't think it doesn't. You know, even the last thing you make, you might feel less. I mean, you get people who are kind of arrogant about it to a certain extent, and I always tend to think in terms of commercial stuff and art. Art is someone who they'll make a thing, and it's like, you come to me. This isn't about me coming to you. This is you come to me. And if you can't come to me, fuck you. Whereas commercial stuff is usually the other way around. It's we're going to come to you. We're going to bring it to your door, and feed it to you, and there's a degree of simplification that occurs there. So I quite like that arrogance that he with art to make stuff artistic. And again, Jeff's stuff has a certain purity to it. But I think it's because the reason I keep citing him in that respect is because he's there's him and Giles, but it's that singularity of focus that you don't always get with a team. But equally, you do need one person to kind of drive that team forwards, because if you don't have that consistency, clarity, conviction behind the vision, you're never going to get the team to kind of cohere behind that. And I've worked on stuff that has not been as clarified as it ought to be, should we say, and I've had to fix stuff that was just too unfocused. And it helps when you're on the outside looking in, because you can come in without the baggage of, and I've been on the other side of it, where I've been a dick and just sat there in the woods going, oh, look at my beautiful bark, it's gorgeous, look at the texture on this leaf. You got people outside going, we don't fucking care about the beauty of your interior, we just care about the exterior and the kind of thing you're presenting. And it's easy to lose yourself in the details, and it's one of the single best and worst things about making stuff, and particularly if you're obsessive, which I am. You can get lost in the detail really easily, because you do end up with this strange almost psychedelic experience of almost fractal experience of just seeing more and more stuff in the detail. It's a freaky fucking thing. It doesn't happen with every project, but there are some projects more than others where you might tap into a thing and realize, oh, that's interesting. Or you might see it in someone else's game when you play. I'm terrible for getting distracted in other people's stuff. We go, oh, cool, I like this. Or maybe I don't like it. But either way, you go, oh, that's interesting. And you're suddenly off on a tangent. Forget how to do that. I'm terrible with this in conversations as well. But I just forget what the fuck were we talking about, because you just made me think of something else.
Yeah. You're talking about like texture and leaves. I don't know why I'm thinking this. Were you involved in Fable at all? No. No, that was Peter Molyneux, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's both.
Yeah. What is your take on Peter Molyneux? I mean, I know for anyone that doesn't really know who he was a bit of a pioneer. I mean, he came up with some wonderful games. You know,
he's a dreamer is probably the easiest way to describe him. And there are other people I've worked with over the years, and I know well who are dreamers, and you need dreamers. However, you cannot put the dreamer. It is the fox in charge of the hen house in some respect. It's a bad thing. You can't have the dreamer in charge. You need the dreamer to dream, and you do need a degree of, uncontrolled dreaming, because you miss out on the magic of these, ridiculous ideas. But equally, you've got to have that degree of pragmatism that says this thing needs to get done, and you need to be able to break that thing down and figure out how the fuck you're going to make that thing happen. And sometimes that's really hard, and particularly if the idea is really strong. I've seen this over the years many times, where you have these fantastically strong ideas and you go, that's fucking brilliant, that sounds amazing. And then if you're tasked with making it, good luck with that, because you're trying to figure out, I don't understand how we translate that brilliant sounding thing into a thing. And even when I've done it myself, where I've made we do these little things, you can call them like prototypes or proof of concepts. There's lots of different ways of talking about them. And I've made things and you think, oh, this is fucking awesome. I really like this. It's going to be brilliant. And then you apply. So, for example, I work in different degrees of scale and layers. So one of the things you do is core play, and there's no pressure, no stress. It's just getting the basics working. And you try to minimize it as much as possible so that you don't, so you can understand what it is you're making, and then you extrapolate that. And when you put game rules around it, and challenges, objectives, structure, that's when it stress tests what you've just made. And it's quite a humbling thing sometimes when that doesn't work and you realize this is fucking shit. I just had a shit thing. But it's horrible, because you go from it being the best thing ever because you're dreaming ahead. And then you get this pragmatism of, oh crap, it's just, how do I make this work? And sometimes you cannot. It doesn't mean that it won't work, but you've got to be, and that's why you need that degree of pragmatism that says, and again, magazines are good for this, because you have that cutoff that says, right, that's the amount of space you've got to fill it, and figure out. And you also know as you're doing it that if we haven't got X, Y, Z done by this point, we're never going to get this fucking done. So it's one of the things we did on development at Denki that worked out quite well, which was you pretty much agree that when you're halfway through, that's all you're going to do. That's it. You're going to spend the other half making it good, finishing it off, making it lovely. But I've also worked on stuff, and I've done it myself, where you run to the end. I used to do it on magazines all the time because you just constantly want to make it as good as it can possibly be. It's got to be the best. It's got to be. And it's why a lot of these things get misconstrued, where it's not that necessarily people are being evil, cynical bastards trying to fuck the whole thing up. They're allowed to fuck things up by sort of dreaming too much and not actually. And dreaming is a thing you do that is in virtual space. It's not intangible fucking space. It's not a thing that you make exist. So it's all very well having these lovely ideas or these tunes in your head, but it's what I mentioned about starting and finishing stuff. Getting that tune, that idea, that story, whatever it is you're trying to get out of your head, you've got to do it. And if you don't get going, and sometimes you stop yourself doing it. I used to do it when I was a kid. You'd stop yourself because you're trying to make it too fucking good too soon. It doesn't even exist, and you're already trying to make it perfect. Duh. And I still occasionally do this, but you've got to. It helps to have someone around, to sort of say, "Hello." You just do a thing, get it done, get it out there, evolve it, or kill it. It's one of these things. You've got to be. You've got to be pragmatic about, because you hit these kill or cure points, and you need to be able to target these things in a measured way. And you need to be able to say to yourself, and you need to have the support and the reasoning behind it. There's a simple test you can usually do with ideas when people have ideas, and I'm terrible for forgetting to do this, but again, because sometimes the ideas are so strong, you think, oh, this is such a cool idea. Coming up even with a minimum of three different things you can do with that idea, and if you can't, and it's amazing how sometimes you struggle. But of course, you're adamant. No, but it's such a good idea. We will think of something, and you keep going. And it's the biggest fucking mistake you can make, because if you cannot generate a shit ton of ideas from the idea, it ain't gonna work. It's not gonna magically fucking happen later on. Honestly, it won't. And it doesn't matter how much you kid yourself. Oh yeah, it's only because we haven't actually done a thing yet. We're just gonna make it and blah 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 blah. Nah. And it's a strange thing. You end up with a finished game that's so easy to judge, and you end up with this thing in someone's head. And the two seldom match. I mean, there are exceptions to that. It's only once you start, getting it out there, expressing yourself. Maybe you're sitting there with your guitar, doing a few chords or whatever, or trying to get the bass line, or maybe just like, I've got this little hook. It's really cool. But that's it. You've only got a hook. If you don't have the skill, this is what I'm about repertoire. If you don't have the chops, as well as another one. In music, it's called the chops. You have the chops to be able to just stand up there and just fucking play. That's where jazz is kind of quite respectful, because they just make it up as they go along. But they've got the chops, they've got the skill, they've got the repertoire. They're just so fucking comfortable with this whole idea of just being able to express. And, they're just doing it. I've lost my train of thought. What an idiot. Okay, there we go.
Peter Molyneux. Yeah, I mean, as you say, you have to be. I mean, it was quite clearly he had all these fantastic ideas. But I suppose the problem with Peter Molyneux was there was nobody who was going to say, Peter, but that's not possible. And he went out there on the internet and magazines, Edge magazine, and we're going to black and white, and it's going to have AI, and it's going to do this
and made it worse because he'd be dreaming on the fly. So it's like, we're going to interview him, and he's going to talk about his thing. And rather than, he will give you some facts, but of course, while he's giving you the facts, he's off dreaming, and then all of a sudden he's dreaming out loud. And it's like, shut the fuck up! Do not dig a bigger hole, because I can't imagine having. Well, actually, I have dealt with similar, but It's the weirdest thing, and of course everyone wants to believe it because it sounds fantastic, but there's only so much of that stuff. Well, to a certain extent, you're getting that at the moment with Trump in the States. He's creating this fucking fog of, and you're looking at it objectively, going what you feel is objectively, and thinking, how is anyone swallowing this shit? But they are, because it fits with their narrative. So I've forgotten what there's all sorts of lovely terminology for that, but it's scary how that stuff happens. But you kind of want to believe it. Why wouldn't you want to believe, from a game point of view, not some horrible fucking right-wing fascistic Nazi point of view, but with a nice game, this nice idea I'm trying to tell you about, that I'm dreaming out loud, and because I'm dreaming out loud, the conviction's there, and I'm saying, it's going to do this, it's going to do this. And you're going, oh, that sounds amazing. I want that so much right now. And also your interpretation of it, I constantly refer to the 6 blind men and the elephant, or whatever the parable is. But everyone's kind of got their angle on it. But of course, everyone's got a different angle on it. And I've seen that so many times where I've thought they were talking about X, and it turned out they were talking about Y, and you realize, oh shit, we were talking about letters of the alphabet. Yes, but we're talking about completely different letters of the alphabet. Or maybe they're talking about A and I'm talking about Z. It's like, oh shit, we're miles apart in terms of what we actually thought we were talking about. And again, it's only when it tangibly exists, at least you've got a more substantial point of reference. Whereas if it's in a document or even a prototype, you don't the scope for misinterpretation or interpretation is all that bigger because it's not as solidified.
Yeah, I saw an interesting video. You probably remember when the Xbox 360 first came out, Peter Molyneux was going to come up with this AI boy thing. I can't remember what the hell it was called, and you could interact.
I remember that. Milo.
Yeah, you had to have the Kinect, and you could talk to him and all this kind of thing.
It was a Kinect. Yeah, that's right.
He bigged it up so much, and then when they actually had a demo of it, it was like completely pants as compared to what he was kind of bigging up, and it ended up just kind of fading away because it was evident that it was never going to reach what. And I think a few people tried and they went, "This is actually shit. It's really boring. It's a boring thing. It's what you say. You can run away with ideas, but then when somebody actually comes in and looks at it and goes, well, that's actually, I wouldn't want to play that. You think, oh shit."
It's like the weirdness with the vividity of a dream where it was like that with early AI when you're looking at stuff and it felt like a fucking fever dream where you're looking at it going, I can't. It's so right and it's so wrong. And then your dreams are of a similar sort of thing where they have a perceived sense of clarity, but really they're just a big munge of nothing and mess that you're kind of making sense of. And with Milo, he's dreaming out loud.
Milo, that's what it was. Milo.
He's saying it's going to be this, it's going to be that, because he wants it to be that. It's not that he's lying. It's not that he's trying to deceive you. He sincerely believes that if this existed, it would be amazing. You're not wrong. How the fuck do we make that exist? And what steps do you take, more importantly, as well? It's not even just a case of how do you make it exist. What steps do we take that we can measure this along the way and say to ourselves, I don't know, I can't see where this is going to go. I can't think of things we can do beyond this. And sometimes you get those one-trick ponies where you just go, that's a brilliant thing for 10 minutes, and then realize that's it. There's nothing else.
Yeah.
And some things are allowed to be that, but yeah.
Listen, guys, before we move on with it, I've only been here an hour anyway. Sorry for keeping you back, although you've done most of the talking. Before we kind of crack on with the main kind of meat and veg, where do you? I mean, if I've got an Xbox Series X downstairs, never switch it on. I'm really, I do like modern games, but
I hardly touch my. I've got an Xbox there, and I hardly use it forever. The PS5 gets some use. The Switch gets the most use, I'd say, and then PC would be second. Yeah,
I mean, from what I can see, the jump between the jump between like a PlayStation 4, a PlayStation 5, it's all just about the detail, the texture on the grass. I mean, you play any modern game now, and the grass is moving about and is blowing about and all this kind of stuff. 20 years time, what games are we going to be playing? Where do we go? Where to quote Haircut 100? Where do we go from here?
Down to the lake out there.
Yeah. I was actually at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and there was about 200 people in the thing, and the guy was giving it all. He goes, "Where do we go for here?" And somebody went, "Down the lake out there."
Brilliant. That's so cool. I love that.
But I mean, where do we go? Because quite literally, I think the industry is in such a place now. It's too costly to take a punt on a game unless you're Jeff Minter.
It's one of the downsides where, but it's also where as things get, and we're seeing with films as well, as things get more realistic, more complicated, in order to make that consistency work, it's so much more work. It's where the kind of indie / retro scene is interesting because, they're using cruder technology, which allows them to they don't have to do quite so much to make stuff work. So that in itself is a useful thing. It means you can express yourself faster and have to get bogged down in. Because I remember when I used to hate doing 3D games, and they were kind of a thing because that disconnect between what you wanted to do and what you had to do, it was so alien. It was, or not so alien. It was kind of like you had to, I don't know, use a pair of chopsticks to pick up a fake hand, to touch a mouse. There was so many layers of it was so obfuscated in terms of the amount of crap you had to do just to make something happen. And of course, tools have improved a shit ton since then, which helps a lot. But equally, what we do with those, people are still reaching further as they always have done. Which has its downside, which is where you suddenly realize my beautiful grass, my beautiful water that is just so beautifully mesmerizing and realistic. Now, I think all art went through this as well, where they were chasing this whole idea of photorealism until these movements, these really fascinating, brilliant movements, have completely fucked it all up. And it's a wonderful thing because it starts people thinking in very different ways, which I love. It goes from being not trying to accurately recreate reality to interpreting reality, and it becomes a genuine means of expression then, because it's you're no longer constrained to the idea that your painting doesn't look like a photograph, so it's shit. It's a case of no, I have decided my splurge of colors and shapes, and the more you live with it, and it goes back to my point earlier about if you're not necessarily in the headspace of the person who's made it. But I think that's the whole point of art, again, where you've got to go to the artist. The artist is doing it because they're doing it. They don't fucking care about you and whether you get it. If you get it, great. If you don't fucking care. Whereas with commerce, you have to care because it's got to make some money. Yeah. I don't know where we're going to be. I mean,
so what is the PlayStation 10 going to offer over what we've got at the moment? There's only, I mean, are we going to reach photorealism, and does it go beyond that? I mean,
well, the photorealism is already there. It's the physical. It's that combination. It's that kind of the realism of presence, I guess, is one way of looking at it. And you sometimes get that with more stylized stuff because there's a consistency that works, and because it's not like reality. You're not benchmarking it against reality. You're benchmarking it against reality, but it's not like reality. So you're like, oh. But if it's consistent, you kind of get sucked into it, and suddenly that becomes real in a very different way. Because I mean, there's thoughts about AI taking over, and the idea that you'll be able to have any film, any game, anything you like, and it possibly will happen. I have no idea, and I don't know if AI will become a sort of 99% thing where it's really good at doing 99%, but can't quite finish properly enough to make it plausible, fully enjoyable. I don't know. I've got no idea where it's going to go. It's unusual to be in a position where, as I say, you've grown up with tech and stuff comes along and it's not shocking, really. It's like, cool. That's a nice evolution of that. Nice. I like it. This is, whoa. So I don't know. And I don't know whether, because certainly, in the last century, I was one of the people who believed in the idea that we'd have kind of vanilla tech where it wouldn't matter what version of a console or whatever it was you had, you'd all be playing the same stuff somehow. It wasn't thinking in terms of the way the cloud works or even streaming stuff. It was more a case of there'd be interpretive stuff that you would, back to the virtual space, you'd be, if you had a crude device, it would interpret the virtual space in a crude way, but at least it'd be the same, fundamentally the same interpretation as somebody who's got a better device for the same thing. So almost the equivalent of I'm playing this game in a crappy pixel form, and I'm playing this game in a super deluxe, high res, ray traced, gorgeous form, but we're playing the same game. But equally, that can't necessarily work either. So I don't know. I've only ever seen things do get better, without a doubt. I'm surprised less often, which is a shame. But then again, if you're in it at the beginning, the odds of you being surprised are quite high because just most stuff you're going to be seeing every day is going to be new and different. And then there's a degree of repetition and familiarity, and over-familiarity comes in, and you're kind of used to seeing stuff. And also you get better at spotting patterns, which means you get slightly more cynical about what you're seeing. Oh, that is just that, but with that, it's not my thing. But it's not necessarily even a judgment on the quality of the thing. It's purely a case of, do I want to invest my time in a thing that I know after 10 minutes is going to be this?
Yeah.
No, I don't. Although I do a lot of judging over for different things, and that's quite good because that forces you to play stuff. And I think most of the time I'm not wrong in my initial assessment, but there are times certainly where you realize, oh, this is interesting. Okay, and it's not like because I think it's to a certain extent dumb to bury the good stuff too deep because the idea. I've got this a few times over the years, and you see it on forums and discussions with people saying, "Yeah, but it takes a good like 20 hours to get into it." I'm like, "Fuck you! I'm not spending 20 hours." I mean, the payoff on that would have to be something amazing to merit investing that much. Because I don't know about you, but if I'm watching a series, a streaming series, I'm watching the first 10 minutes, I'm thinking, I don't know if it's worth my time.
Yeah.
And it's not that this is shit. It's more a case of me and this, we don't have a relationship that's going to work. And so you might fast forward it a bit to see what's going on, which of course you can't do with games. And you go, oh, okay, that's not too bad. Oh, look, I tell you what, I've watched some of that first one. That was okay. I'm going to jump to the second one now and just see what that's like. And you realize, well, the second one's actually pretty good. Okay, I was wrong about this. I quite like it. Or, no, I was right. This is balls. And you turn it off. And the amount of stuff, as I get older, I've got less tolerant in terms of the stuff I'm prepared to spend time engaging with. The amount of unfinished stuff I've got. You go onto like Netflix or whatever, you realizing, are you going to finish watching? And you see all these little tiny bars at the bottom. Like, holy shit!
13%.
Yeah, or less. There's so much stuff I haven't finished. Oh my god! Because why? Because there's so much brilliant stuff out there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's more great stuff than there's ever been, which is one of the brilliant things I think about the way games have become so normal, or normalized, or but certainly more normalized than they were. It's easy to forget how, sort of isolated and even ostracized. And no one took it seriously at all unless you were in it. And it was a kids thing, and it was this, and it was a flash in a pan, and it's never going to take off. And now it's become quite normal. It still hasn't hit quite. It's weird. I think it's that older generation to a certain extent that didn't grow up with it in the same way that we did. And I'm probably part of the same generation, but I grew up with it, and it was something that I'm into. But I can't ever see that disappearing. I think I'm going to die at my desk. I've realized I'm just going to be
clutching an Xbox 360 controller.
So I'll either be playing something or making something. Yeah, I'm just going to be gone. And I can imagine I do get why some people get kind of, I don't know, they don't understand, or they fear it maybe, and they get kind of more uncertain about these changes that occur. So I have no idea where it's going to go. If AI hadn't have come along with the alacrity that it had, I probably would have said, we're just going to end up with more of the same, but more realistic. VR is an interesting one in that I tried it a long time back. I think it was Virtuality in sort of like early 90s. And that was kind of convincing-ish, but not enough to make you want to put the headset on and play it again, sort of thing. And I found that I remember trying I think it was a DK2 development kit for Oculus, and I thought this is pretty fucking cool. Actually, I really like the vividity of it. It feels so real. Even shitty shapes with shitty textures feel real. This is amazing. But then again, I realized I can't be asked with headsets. So, and I've seen this with the Apple Vision Pro. The amount of people who are going, this is amazing, and it's like it could well be amazing, but you're not still using it because you can't be asked but the headset. And I can't be asked but the headset.
It's funny how but actually I read last week I think that PlayStation 2 are starting to PlayStation 2 whatever it is, Sony I should say.
The PSVR 2
they're starting to kind of step back from it, and it's interesting you're saying. It's just I think as a human race we've just become so lazy at things. I mean, I've got an Oculus Quest sitting over there, and it's like, and one of the things that pisses me off with everything modern now is you've got to charge. I quite fancy a quick shot. Bollocks! It's run out of charge. Where's the charger?
Humongous update.
Yeah, You can't find it. You can't find the charge or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I've seen I've got a thing called Plex. I've got.
I remember Plex. I've not used that for years.
Yeah, I've got all my favourite films on my computer, and but also, I mean, I've signed up to like Netflix and all that kind of stuff. And I've seen me sometimes. I think I really quite fancy watching, I don't know, Blade Runner, and I'll go through. I can't find it. And if I turn to my right, I've got a DVD. I've got a case of DVDs, and Blade Runner's sitting there. And I'll just watch something else because I'm far too lazy to physically take the scoot and walk to the DVD player and put it in. You know what I mean? Seriously, you end up. I try and find it online. If I can't find it online, I'll just watch something else. It's ridiculous. Just before we crack on, guys, you're talking about your 3DS. I don't know if you noticed that about a month ago, somebody has released an emulator for. In fact, you might be able to see it there if I tilt
for the Quest.
No. See there, that's my Nintendo. What's it called again? Virtua Boy. Remember the Nintendo Virtua Boy?
I used one of those in Japan, and it was the weirdest fucking thing.
Yeah,
weirdest thing. It felt like it was quite effective.
Can you like action therapy?
I played 3 games on it. I can't think what I played. It was. This goes back a long time. This would have been 99. I was out. It's the only time I've been to Japan. I was out for the Dreamcast launch, and Sega took us out and gave us kind of a guy to look after us and guide us around. He took us to different places. It was really cool. And,
was that sorry guys? I had my head set off there for a second. I didn't hear the last 20 seconds.
I missed that. I've only been to Japan once, and it was for the Dreamcast launch in '99. And it's where I played. We had Sega gave us someone to look after us and sort of show us around and so on, which was really handy. But we went to loads of stores and stuff like that just to look around. And one of the ones I went to had a Virtua Boy, so that's where I got to use it. And I played about 3 or 4 games on it. I think it was 3. I can't remember what they were, but it was really. I quite liked it. It was weird.
It's a lot. It's a lovely bit of tech, and you know what? Yeah. Even now, it's impressive. I mean, considering it's all like mirrors and it's hardware. There's no software in this thing.
It was I quite enjoyed it. I mean, the other one we tried at the same time was a pair of glasses that were like watching a cinema screen big. So it was playing a film. You could watch a film on the glasses. I think they were plugged in. I can't remember. They weren't that big. They were just sort of kind of chunky pair of glasses you put on, and you sit back, and it was because they had 2 screens. It was like watching the cinema screen up close. That was the same store. I remember going through a few different things. They just had some weird, cool shit that you'd never seen at home, including a Virtua Boy, which I was aware of but had never seen. It's like, whoa, Virtua Boy.
But somebody has very cleverly written an emulator for the 3DS, and you can actually, all you need to do is, I don't know if you've put like the homebrew channel on it. All you do is just click. You go to the homebrew channel, whatever it is, and then you can you go to the website. You can scan a QR code, and when you scan the QR code, it automatically downloads it. And all you do is you stick the ROMs in, so you actually get to play the Virtua Boy games, and it uses a 3D screen. It's phenomenal.
Did you play much of the AR stuff on 3DS? I loved it.
The
AR.
The augmented reality stuff.
It's brilliant fun. Absolutely brilliant fun, because you didn't have to put a fucking headset on. It was quite nice just being able to scan around, because we did we played the fishing game a lot. And the other thing was we'd blow the cards up bigger as well, so everything was bigger, which was fucking great fun. So you're playing the fishing so you got like an A4 version of the card, and it scales everything up. I remember seeing some guy in Japan did it where they scaled up, and they did some enormous thing, which when you look through your 3DS, there it was. There is that. I guess that's another part of the reason I like 3DS. It is that virtual space thing again, and it's a bit like, what's the film where there's all that stuff around them, and they can only see. Is it Buckaroo Banzai, where they can only see the stuff? They have to be able to. I can't remember what it is. They have to be able to. They don't wear glasses. What they do? It's not they live, but there's stuff all around them going on around them, creatures and stuff like that. But they can only see. And that's what 3DS used to remind me of with the AR. It was just so much fun with the. I mean, some of the stuff didn't work, but some of it was brilliant. It was better than. Did you ever try it on? Was it PSP or Vita? They also had some AR, but that wasn't as good because it was quite a cute little football game on that, and I was playing that. But if you went outside the space, it just killed it dead, and you lost the illusion. So it was too easily done. Whereas the 3DS one, they must have really thought about it because rarely it happened, and if it did, you could kind of get back into the space. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Great little. I mean, Nintendo. I'm such a Nintendo fanboy. I love their stuff to bits.
Well, these guys have been pushing. They've been pushing. I mean, I spoke about originality and the lack of, but Nintendo have never been afraid to. I mean, that thing came out in, well, it's down here now. That came out in like 1992. You know, they were always pushing it. And then you had the Wii. And unfortunately, the Wii, I mean, probably some of the best games in the Wii were the actual Nintendo games. But then you got all the shovelware, whereas you had to to open a door, you had to go like that, and it just became pretty shit. And then you had the what do you call it, the Wii U with the controller.
I like the Wii U.
They've always
great fun with the Wii U.
Yeah, great. Yeah, completely underrated machine, I think.
It's really good for 5-player games because as a family we'd play a lot of the games on there, and you could play 5 players, which was really unusual. And all the stuff that Nintendo did was just interesting. And the gimmicky, yes, it's gimmicky, but the gimmicks were really well made, and they exploited them really well. They did them enough. I mean, they have at least 3 ideas, so to speak. So they would take a thing and they'll do some stuff with it. And also they're pretty good at being able to say, well, that thing hasn't got much in terms of legs, so we'll rein that in a bit and put it as part of something else. And they tend to end up, a lot of their games end up with, like Mario Wonder recently, where you're looking at it going, geez, that feels like a game in its own right. And you do that a lot with Mario games. You do it a lot with Nintendo games. There's an entire game in that thing, and there probably isn't. And that's why it's ended up where it has, because they realized it's not quite as big as you think.
Yeah. Some of the mini games. I mean, my daughter and I still play the Wii. Is it part? I can't remember what it's called. There's a kind of party type game, and you got these little mini games, and some of them are absolutely bloody brilliant.
Some of the party games are superb. Yeah. And Wii Sports was still really good. The Switch Sports is not so good, sadly.
What was that one? Sorry.
Switch Sports isn't so good. They messed with the bowling. I don't know why they did. They took bowling, which was really good fun on the Wii and even on the Wii U with Resort, but they messed it up on Switch Sports. Something rotten. I was really pissed off about that.
Anyway, right, the Nice and Nasty podcast. I think I did kind of explain to you, Gary, what this is about. You're told to select 3 games. It's not necessarily your favourite games or the best games. You're only allowed to ever play these 3 games. You can't play anything else. You're on a desert island, whatever, doesn't matter, but these are the only 3 games you will ever be able to play ever again. In no particular order. Do you want to give me game number 1, and why would you pick it?
Yeah, so this was tricky. So I went through a shit ton of games, and I've ruled out, because of that idea of having to play these forever. I don't think I could ever play something like Inside, as much as I really love Inside. I think it's a beautiful, brilliant game. I couldn't play that again. It was just a waste of time. It was of its time. It was, it doesn't make it any less a game, but there's loads like that on that list. I thought, that's not going to work. And then I went through a whole bunch of stuff like Defender and Robotron and Tetris, which I fucking loved a bit. Tetris 99 is amazing.
Is it? How does it differ from the original Tetris?
So it's basically, they took Tetris and they stuck a what are they called? The survival mode. God damn it! What's that bloody film called? It's the one that they stuck into. It's what made Fortnite. The Last Man Standing thing. So you have 98 other people playing Tetris at the same time, all sending. You can choose where the shit goes. And you're all sending shit to each other, and it's last person standing.
What platform is that on?
Switch.
Right.
It's free if you have the online package, whatever it's called. It's free. And you can spend more and get loads of other modes. So it's got like really nice single player modes, all sorts of challenges, all sorts of stuff like that. It's really, really beautifully put together. But yeah, the main mode in it is Tetris 99. Which is you against 98 other Tetris players around the world. It's just fucking amazing, honestly. And I'm pretty good. I'm not as good at Tetris as I used to be, but I'm pretty good at Tetris. So I love that to bits. And then they did Mario 35, which was fucking brilliant. Same idea. You took, so it's 35 players, you and 34 others. because it's 35 years of Mario. But it's basically original NES Mario, and you're playing it with other players. I'm trying to remember exactly how it worked, but it was superb because you'd be sending crap into each other's game and trying to survive as long as possible. And again, last person standing. It was so good. It was like a completely new version of a platform game and of Mario. It was amazing stuff. Then they did it with what's it called? It's the racing game I don't like very much. F-Zero. They've done it with that, and I can't be arsed with that. It's just a mess. And it's a game I don't like that much anyway, but playing it was just a nightmare. They actually did it with Pac-Man as well, and that did not work. It didn't work in the way I wanted it to. So I lost interest in that. So those worked. So I've ended up with 3 that I reckon I can play forever. The first one is Splatoon 3, because it's probably my favorite game of all time, I think, because I've put 10,000 hours nearly into all 3, across all 3.
10,000?
Well, it's getting on for 10,000. It's not 10,000, it's getting on for 10,000. So, yeah, it's a few thousand on the first one. And then about 3.5, I think, on the second one. And I'm up to 2.5 on the third one. So actually, it's not quite 10,000, but it's getting there. And I don't think I've played anything else as much as this ever. Because it's like, there are so many reasons. I mean, it's apart from it being just a fucking beautifully unusual, original, different game. It's a game that people think is one thing and it's not. They think it's a shooter and it's not. It's more than that. It's so Nintendo. It's so inventive. The types of weapons you have in there are insane. It's not a paintball game. It looks like it. It's a really interesting game where the ink you put down, the color you put down, the paint you put down, it allows you to do so many more things. You can swim through it fast. So you end up with these beautiful sort of Defender-esque moments where you're just kind of cruising along quite slowly and you walk quite slowly, but then you've got this strip of ink that you've painted yourself and you can just zoom through it like you're flying in Defender. It's really nice. Use it for recharging. I could probably talk about it all fucking day easily. It's such a rich game. The single player stuff's okay, but the multiplayer stuff is brilliant. And the games are restricted to 5 minutes and 5 minutes only. They give you the mode, they give you the arena. There are only 2 arena on each of the cycles. There's only 2 modes. It used to be 1, so they've changed and improved this over the years. So the first one you had, it was every 4 hours the rotation changed, and you had to play what they gave you, and that was it. They've kind of doubled it now, so it's changes every 2 hours, and you get 2 modes to choose from, plus the default mode. So you kind of get you get a sort of casual mode, which is still competitive, and then you get these sort of hardcore modes that allow you to rank up and stuff. All the loadouts are fixed. You don't get any messing around with the loadouts. You get to choose anything. That's all fixed. It's hard to know where to start explaining how fucking cool it is because there's so much stuff in it. It's pretty much just a third-person shooter on the face of it. And I kind of I got bored of FPSs after, I think Quake was the last one I played and really enjoyed. And then after that, I just can't bother anymore. They haven't changed enough for me. Splatoon 3, even though it's a TPS, not an FPS, the way you play is so clever. The weapons are so inventive because it's not just shooting shots; it's shooting ink, paint. It's ink, but it's like shooting paint. And the stuff you can do with it is so fucking clever. And they have different types of weapons that you just don't have in other types of games. So you get like one of the equivalents of a tank is not tank as in tank as in the roll. Is the rollers, and they have these massive fucking rollers, and all the weapons feel like some kids made them out of like bits lying around, which gives it that extra fucking joy. So the rollers are like these. Sometimes they look like a bit of an ink pen or a bastard ink pen. One's got a big curvy straw stuck around the side, and they have all these just amazing things. Well, the roller's like a big tank thing, so it's quite slow and heavy, and you're slooping around with it. But what's amazing about when you're zooping around and the ink's all down around you, and it's a bit like you're in a jungle and things are coming out of the greenery because you're not entirely sure where anyone's going to come from because all this, the opposite colors all lying around you, and you're thinking, shit, there could be anyone out there. and this guy will leap out with his fucking roller, and it's this huge, hefty thing. It's like, bam, and it's like a one-shot kill type thing, and you're dead, and you're like, Jesus, and you shit yourself. It's so good. But you get this other type of weapon. They've all got such character. There's these brushes. Yeah. And again, similar sort of thing, but they flail, and they flail at you with a fucking. It's like somebody coming and going, oh, like that to you. And you're like, but it's just so good. It's so good, honestly. And they have standard stuff, like standard sort of machine gun type stuff, and little rifles and sniper type stuff, and all these different types. But just the way they've designed it is so good. You get loads of warning, and it all feels so fair. The only thing that's bad about it actually is the matchmaking. And matchmaking is really fucking hard anyway. Matchmaking is a bit variable. But yeah, the like the snipers, for example, you think, oh, snipers must be a big pain in the ass. No, because they have a line, like a laser sight that comes out, so you know always where they are. And it's like a lot of things that Nintendo do beautifully with information design that I am, because information design is really hard to do, and really, really hard to do well. A lot of their information design is so good where you think, well, that's just giving too much away, isn't it? And it's not, because it's just the right amount they've given away, and you feel like you've had just enough warning that I could have fucking dodged that, or I could have avoided that, and it's my fault, you bastards. Yeah. So I could easily play that forever, because it's again classic Nintendo. With each of the weapons, you can effectively replay the entire fucking game. The DLC they did recently is like that. Oh, they started doing these challenges this year, which was end of last year. So today's challenge was it yesterday's challenge? Yesterday's challenge was amazing. They what they did with the brushes and the rollers, which the brushes can be fairly fast. The rollers are slow and heavy, as I say, like a tank. They did a challenge mode where everything was sped up, so the rollers went like 10 times faster than they did. It was like Benny Hill on acid. It was amazing. And you're laughing, and you're losing, and you're getting hammered, and you're laughing your ass off because it's so much fun. They did another mode where everyone could jump extra high. It was just it's like someone's gone mod crazy almost, but they're very well considered mods. So that's a new mode they've added. It's so good. They've added a little board game thing in there, which is kind of like a really cool, clever turn-based board game that kind of uses the essence of the action game Splatoon. But it's in this really interesting strategic turn-based game. It's so fucking cool as well. And the community. Oh my god, the community is amazing. So they've got. Remember, and this is again what I love about Nintendo. The way they do a thing. So they did what was it called? Was it the Miiverse? It was a thing they did on Wii U, and it was everyone kind of potted around.
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, it came out in the Wii U. Yeah, and you when you switch it on, if you happen to be online, I'll see a little mini Gary and a little mini whatever.
Exactly and
walking
about.
And
that kind of faded out and didn't really,
Yeah.
It's all in Splatoon now, and so when you're wandering around in the hub, there are people wandering around and they're all in different clothes and stuff because there's loads of different gear you can wear. But you're allowed to post one thing, and it's a tiny little window of I can't think what it is. It's a few hundred pixels by not very much. Monochrome only, black and white. And you can write or draw on there using the Switch screen. You could do the same on the old days with the old Wii U screen. But you can only do one post at any one time. So you can replace it as much as you like, but it's only ever one thing. So you can't have a history or anything like that. One post at a time. They've got their kind of Nintendo police making sure that people aren't doing too many cocks or anything too horrible. Although the other day I was playing a game with the guy with the brush was on the other. We were losing, and he was trolling the team because he was up on the other end of their base. And if you look at the map, you see the way the colours all distributed. And he trolled a massive cock on their base. It's like, that is just brilliant because you can't stop that. It was funny though. We were losing, and he was just trolling me. Anyway, but yeah, the community's brilliant. So everyone's seems really quite nice and very positive. It's very neurodiverse. There's a lot of diversity also in terms of the types of people. So you got a lot of people talking about gay and trans rights, and it's all such a really positive. I mean, the space is just it's not like going on to I don't know fucking 4chan or Twitter or anything like that. Where you think I can't say anything because I'm going to get eaten alive by arseholes because of the constraints they have in there, and I think also because of the type of game, and it's just such a weird game, and that it looks like a kid's game. It is so rich. There was this great thing I saw years ago where someone had it was your typical, it was your perceived COD player, like adult buff dude, and it turns out it's like 10-year-old kid. And Splatoon's the other way around, of course. It looks like your typical Splatoon player is going to be this little kid. And it's not. It's probably older dudes because it is such a rich, interesting fucking game. I mean, it's primo shit. So I could play that forever, and I could probably talk about it forever. And as I said, there's so much richness in there. I'm not even sure where to start to explain why it's so fucking good. It's the sort of thing you could write, books on why it's so good. So that's my first choice because I love that to bits.
I've never actually played Splatoon, but my daughter loves it. In fact, she was playing number 3 a couple of weeks ago, I think, because there was some download thing. And I'll sit here and watch her playing it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to rudely interrupting you here, but I want to get this out now because they also do this thing called Splatfest. It's usually one a month at least, but sometimes more. And it's where the whole sort of community comes together. There's a massive party vibe, and the hub is kind of dressed up with all sorts of fucking decorations and really cool party music. Everyone's got all the characters and all the other humans, the characters dotted around. They're all dancing away in different ways. It is just an amazingly positive, upbeat vibe. They have the characters in the game doing singing on a stage and shit. Massive floats floating around, and all it is you each pick a theme. You usually used to be 2 themes. It's now 3 themes. So the one that's coming up this weekend, which is going to be awesome, is which musical instrument do you most associate with? Drums, guitar, or keyboards? I've gone for drums. And so you have the 3 different colors, 3 different teams, all stupid things like that. One was mayonnaise and ketchup, which was the weirdest one because it was like blood and jism because you had all the red from the ketchup and all the kind of creamy white from the mayonnaise. Anyway. So that's this weekend, and so you have these kind of battles that will go on between the teams, and there are all these different measurements they use to decide which team wins, and it's really friendly, and you just have a lovely weekend and we still do it actually. Still play the kids, or the kids who are still here will play sometimes with me on the Splatfest if they know there's one on it. It's just so upbeat. It's so good. And they do this new one called because there's a co-op mode in there as well, which is fucking nails. That's the other weird thing about Nintendo. All their games are fucking nails. It's really rare they do, a nice, soft, simple, happy, friendly, easy game that you can play. And it's rare. I can't remember the last Mario I finished. Oh, 3DS was the last one I finished. Could not finish 3D World on Wii U. Too fucking hard. The last level. I think my son finished it in the end, but Christ, that level was hard. They don't shy away from this stuff, but they're beautifully balanced usually, so that you end up with, you get a richness of a game out of it. And you go, I had a really good game. Oh my God, there's all this more stuff. Although Odyssey was weird because Odyssey had too much stuff for my liking. I really enjoyed it to a point, and then it's like I've had enough of this. But there's literally the same again to play through. I can't be bothered. But yeah, the apportioning on Splatoon is just beautiful. Really is beautiful. But the co-op mode's fantastic. It's kind of like basically a kind of zombie fest where you're all trapped on it's 4 of you. Teams are always 4. You're trapped on effectively an island, and all these zombie fish type creatures attack you. It's just so cool. And sometimes they have like a mist and fog rolling in. It's like extra creepy, and you've got to work together. Also, the amount of communication you can do is quite limited within the game. I mean, you can use apps or Discord, of course, to communicate, but by and large, you're usually playing with randos, so you've got to kind of work together. I love the learning that goes on with that. And you're seeing people do stuff and trying to figure out what the fucking hell they're doing within the limited communication you've got. And as a team game, I don't know, I'm still fucking learning stuff. So this has been out for 7 years, 9 years? I forget when the first one came out. Yeah. And it's 3 games, and I've played it to death, and I'm still fucking learning stuff, which is why I still like it. And I'm starting with the 3rd one. I rarely used a lot of the weird weapons. I didn't get on with sniper rifles so much. And I didn't go with the rollers or there's buckets as well. The buckets are so fucking cool. I didn't get on with those weapons so much. And some of the secondaries, you have a main secondary, they're called secondary subs, and a special. Classic stuff. But they're all kind of interesting and weird. There's a killer whale thing, which is like 3, or actually it's more than that. It's 5. They're updated now. So it's kind of lines of death that shoot out. But again, the speed at which they move, the way they move, the warning you get, it's enough to kind of avoid and dodge them to make you feel like fucking hell. But at the same time, it feels like there's enough danger in there as well. It's so fucking brilliantly balanced. But all the specials are like that. But with this is the first one of the 3 where I've actually got bothered to play with the other weapons and stick with them because I never got on with them in the previous 2 games, and I'm having a fucking great time. So it's like you've got an entirely new game because you're playing it with an entirely new weapon, because it is we were talking about earlier with Nintendo do stuff that feels like almost they do throwaway stuff that you think, can we get an entire game out of that?
Yeah.
This game is full of that. Every single fucking weapon is usually or class of weapon is so different. And with the DLC they did recently, you really got a feeling for that when you're playing through, because the idea was with each one of the key types of weapon, you had to go through this tower. So it's kind of a roguelike type thing. And so you had to play with each type of weapon, and you played radically differently with each type of weapon because you had to. But it was such a lovely feeling to have the same game, but from an entirely new perspective.
Yeah.
So as I said, the richness. I mean, it's a beautiful game. So that was easy. That was number one.
I think it's. I mean, I love Nintendo. I think there's a lot of, as you say, there's a lot of haters, people, fucking keyboard warriors and like PC kind of snobs. Oh, Nintendo for kids. You couldn't get further from the truth. Yeah, they have kind of cutesy graphics, but
I think Nintendo are for the playful. I think that's the key thing I would say. And the playful don't necessarily have to be kids, although I think if you are playful, you are childlike at heart. So
yeah, I mean, Nintendo, they make games, they make them uber. I mean, if you're to rate a Nintendo game on a playability factor, it's going to be a 12 out of 10. It's just ridiculously playable. It's seamless,
and richness. The amount of stuff in Tears of the fucking Kingdom. Oh my god! Again, not my kind of thing. My son plays it a lot, and I'm watching him play it and going, I can't believe you're still playing this. And I'm seeing stuff I have not seen before, or he's doing something new in an existing space that I've not seen him do before. It's like, it's just fucking insane. I mean, from a business point of view, if you look at it in clinical, cynical, commercial terms, surely this is a bad thing to do, because you've just given. I know you're spending 50, 60 quid on it, although they're usually about 40 quid if you get them at launch. But the value for money is bonkers.
Now, you've been playing them for like 10,000 hours. I mean, work that out per hour. Not very much.
Yeah. But it's like I used to smoke when I was younger, and it's because of the way it's beautifully apportioned and controlled that you. It's because one of the reasons I don't play Zelda games is because the investment is huge and you have to sit down and spend a lot of fucking time. I can't be doing with that. But the Splatoon 3 is very deceptive, because it's like, it's just 5 minutes. It's like having a cigarette. Cigarette would last 10 minutes. I'll have a cigarette break. I might have a Splatoon break. And you just sit down and think, because it's quick to boot up, because it's cartridge based for a start. But the games are beautifully streamlined, so you just bang, you're in really quickly.
Yeah.
And you realise, I just have another one. Just another one. So you get, it's like Pringles, salted peanuts, cigarettes. It's got that kind of, oh my god, I just have another one. So they've got that so good. I'm going to move on to my second one, which is also Nintendo, but not what you might think. It's Rhythm Tengoku The Best Plus. I forgot what it's called in the UK. I tend to buy the Japanese ones. Not aware of that one at all. What are they called? They're called different things over here. Damn it! It's basically mini games, micro games, that use rhythm to play them. So they're rhythm action games. The first one was on GBA, just called Rhythm Tengoku. And I remember first seeing that. A friend of mine brought it in. I was like, because he had I used to get Japanese games before anyone else. I was like, the fuck is this? And it was just so weird. And I think the opening game was something like, it was a printout and you had to tap along to the printout to get the printout to come through, and it was assessing your rhythm. And they're just really simple rhythm games. And what I like about them most of all is they're not like all the other rhythm games where you effectively have to just fucking match. They're not. The reason I hate a lot of the rhythm games, or don't get on with the rhythm games, is because you've got all this cool shit going on. So I've just realized my tablet's on top of Donkey Konga, for example, and that is shit, because you've got these things, you've got the congas, which are great, bongos, and then you've got visual stuff going on that's interesting, but all you're focused on is just dots. And it's like, fuck you. It's just and they're all like that. And I know, and I get, if you like it, that's your thing, fine. I don't, and I don't like the fact that whereas Rhythm Tengoku, they don't have that at all. So you might have one, for example, where one of the early ones, which was fantastic, was karate, and all the styling on it. So WarioWare, which I nearly put on.
Love WarioWare.
Nearly put that on.
Brilliant game.
this supplants it for me because it's just a little bit richer. But it's the same sort of vibe. It's just fucking ridiculous. The styles are all over the place, a bit like WarioWare, but more so. So you get like really weird hand drawn stuff and weird sort of. Actually, no, it's the same as WarioWare. WarioWare's got that kind of, who made this? A bunch of completely random high people. So an example of how it might work is you get a karate dude and it's hand drawn as well, and things are thrown at him to the beat. But it's so beautifully synchronized in time that you don't need circles and dots and lines and shit. You're focused on the thing you want to look at, which is the karate dude. And it's a bit like the bonus game in Karate Champ or IK1, I forget, where things are thrown at you. So it's getting like rocks and shit thrown at him, and then you get random stupid stuff. It's always stupid stuff. Sometimes a flower pot, sometimes something ridiculous. And you just have to smash stuff to the beat. But it's so beautifully synchronized and so beautifully ridiculous. And they're all handcrafted songs as well. The songs are usually 60 seconds, 2 minutes. Some of them are longer. They do mega mixes and all sorts of stuff. And again, massively classic fucking Nintendo inventiveness where they just mash stuff up. So you get this kind of, the structure might be such that you do individual songs and then you do this kind of mega mix thing at the end, which is fucking amazing. And yeah, so even that karate one is just brilliant. The song's brilliant. The feeling you get of being in time, and unlike other rhythm games I play, it feels like I'm in sync. Whereas I find I'm not. I think it's because I'm constantly distracted by what else is going on, and I can't focus on, circle dot, circle dot, circle dot. I can't. Yeah. I find that too boring. But this game, Rhythm Tengoku, it's had the most ridiculous situations that it sets up, the most ridiculous interactions, but also the simplest in terms of it's all rhythm-based stuff. And it's gorgeous, and it's funny, and it's stupid, and you just replay it loads, and it gets harder as well. And it's got loads of little sub things. And I bought every single one when they, initially the European ones, but over the years I've bought Japanese ones ahead. So I've only got the Japanese one on my Japanese 3DS because it was so fucking. I just wanted it. I really want it now. When's it coming out in the UK? Oh, miles away. No good. Must have now. And so the Best Plus, I've chosen that because what it does is it takes all the previous ones and it's ripped out all the stuff that most of the mini games. And there's like hundreds maybe of these mini games in there. From all the previous ones in the series. It's missed a few out that I really like and miss, but never mind. The golf one's brilliant. There's a little fucking golf one with a monkey and a fucking mandrill. It's so mad. You've got to Google this shit because it is so good. And you must have no heart if you don't laugh at some of the stuff that's going on. Yeah, so it's just a simple golf game where you're hitting golf balls in rhythmic time. You play a little tiny monkey. And a mandrill's throwing the balls. It's just so weird. Anyway, it's full of stuff. It's full of weird stuff.
And that's on the 3DS, you said, guys, yeah?
That one is, yeah. There was one on the Wii. It's got another name. Hold on, let me just Google what it's called.
What was it called again? Rhythm something, what was it?
Rhythm Tengoku.
10.
It's called... Hold on, I'll tell you what it's called in the UK. It's called Rhythm Heaven. The name keeps changing, so it's had other names over the years. That's why.
I take it we're not losing anything with playing the British one. I take it it's just as good.
No, what they've done in the last two British ones is they've put in a language option that allows you to play either with Japanese lyrics or English lyrics, which is fucking great. So you get best of both worlds. So I kind of missed out because I didn't get because the English lyrics are really well done. It's not hear it and go, oh, that's fucking mank. They're really well done. Again, really good family games. Really good. It's one of the things I love about the Wii as well. Is the pass around quality. It takes you back to that fucking thing when you were a kid and you were playing games back then, and you only had one console or computer between like the whole fucking street or whatever.
Yeah.
And you'd all go around to someone's house, and you have these turnabout competitions and shit. And it was brilliant. So it's multiplayer gaming in its infancy.
Playing summer games or summer games too in the Commodore 64. You would be 80s.
Exactly that was so much fun, and again, also they're quite bite-sized as well, so you could turn it around pretty quickly. I fucking love that. It's so much more interesting and personal than remote play online. So yeah, that that was played with the family again. We passed it around. It was brilliant being able to see, because the games are challenging. Again, they don't fucking hold back. They get hard. They get hard fairly quickly. And it's got some basic unlocks, and they've got better at rating your performance, which is nice. In the old days, it was either passed or failed, I think. But they've got better at giving you some sort of intermediate ratings and stuff, which is nice. It kind of drives you on a bit more. Yeah, I'm just looking at this. There's so many fucking studios. There's a game where you pluck hairs. Apparently, it was originally a bloke's face, and you pluck the hairs with tweezers in time to the music. And they thought it was a bit grim, so they changed it to an onion. So it's an onion with a beard, and you're plucking the onion's beard. It's so good.
If I remember rightly, WarioWare, there's one where your nose is like dripping, and you've got to go, and you've got to try and like soak it back into your nose.
I love WarioWare. The only WarioWare I've not liked was the one they did on the Switch.
I was the same. I bought that when it came out, and I've kind of went,
it was clever, but it wasn't. Whereas the new one's much better, because the new one's like Smooth Moves 2. So Smooth Moves was amazing, and so this is the new one. So they've got 2 WarioWares on Switch. First one, new one, really good. So I nearly picked that, but no.
Brilliant. I'll need to check that one out. So number 2 is Rhythm Heaven, or what was it with the Japanese pronunciation?
Tengoku, Tengoku. I don't know what it means. I don't bother caring. I just know it's a rhythm Tengoku. That's what I know what that is.
Awesome.
Third one is not Nintendo. Surprise! It nearly was. I was going like, maybe Animal Crossing New Leaf. New Leaf's still the best one. The new one is all right, but New Leaf was so good. I picked Minecraft because I thought I was so close between that and Tetris 99 as well. They were the last 2 on that I was going to fucking hell, because Tetris can be quite cathartic and relaxing. I picked Minecraft because I thought I had great fun with that when it came out. I was an early adopter on that one, and then kids came along, and it was brilliant being able to play it with them. So they would gather around, and I had my laptop, and you'd be playing away, and it was really cool because you're digging down, and suddenly you hear, and all the kids are going, and of course you're feeding off their energy, and I'm feeding off, and it's so cool. And they get the zombies, of course, and the skeletons, and you're trying to build this little base, and of course you're part of you is playing a bit of a DM role, because you're kind of bigging it up and describing and setting a story and the scene for the kids as you're going on. We've got to build a base, because if we don't build the base, the zombies are going to come out and the spiders are going to come out, blah blah blah. And of course, when you're digging down, you still get the spiders and shit in the underground. And that was so much fun. And also you're taking suggestions as well, so there's a bit of DJing almost going on. Again, a bit DMing. Well, it's a case of, can we do a bit of this? Oh, let's do that. Let's do this. Let's do that. But you were acting them out because they were younger then and they couldn't really do it. Of course, as they got older, and it was just beautiful. We'd have like maybe a house party or something for New Year's or something, and families would come around. The kids would come around. Of course, we had the Wii U out, and we had Wii U Minecraft, 4-player split screen. Oh my god, it was so cool. Just all the kids gathered around the TV, and you're just watching them. It's just so beautiful to watch. And I've not played it for years, and I came back to it fairly recently, and Jesus Christ, they've added so much stuff to it. So I don't think I'll ever fucking get bored of that. And particularly we use some of the red, what's it called? Red balls. What was it called? The red stuff. You can make all sorts of computery things and all sorts of other stuff. So I have great fun setting up intricate things, just building worlds and stuff. I don't think I'd get bored of that at all. I mean, I haven't played it for years, but that's only because plenty of other things to do, and it does feel a bit of a time sink, but that for me would be a beautiful time sink on that time I can spend just making shit in Minecraft. I probably wouldn't even need any mods, because there's some beautiful mods out there. Some of them go too far, some of them are really nice. I don't know, I could live with that forever, I think.
I mean, it's quite literally kind of Lego, but on computer form, isn't it? You
totally
can
agree.
Build whatever you want. Yeah.
It is basically our generation. Our generation, the newer generation's Lego, without a doubt. I agree, and it's done in such a really simple. The core of what he did there was initially I was thinking, this is just a fucking editor, and it felt like a bit like work. But then you're kind of seeing what other people are doing with it, and you think, actually, this is really good fun, and you do get that kind of Lego vibe out of it. because you use a lot of tools like that when you're making games, but not like that because you're not doing it for any other reason. The thing that's always struck me as amazing about Minecraft is the fact that it is so fragile that because you get trolls would deliberately trash stuff online, but once it's gone. I mean, yes, you can save stuff, but once that's gone, it's gone. And that's unusual because normally with a game you're quite possessive about your status and your state, and you want to maintain it and carry it forwards. And yet with a lot of Minecraft stuff, it's very disposable. So most of the stuff my kids have ever made over the years, and most of the stuff actually all of the stuff I think I've done over the years has been disposable. I've not kept any of it. But it was just in the moment, you're just having great fun building all this stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful fucking game. It really is. Yeah, so that's my 3. I would be quite happy with those 3 forever and ever.
3 wonderful games there, absolutely. And as you say, you're never really going to get to the end of them. Have you completed Rhythm 10 Daguku?
I have, although not 100%. I'm not 100%. I've tried, but it gets so hard. Then you have to be so accurate. But I think if I'm chilling on a beach with my infinite power, unlimited power, feeding into my little 3DS. I'll be fine. I've got plenty of time to really sort of chill out and get into the groove, I think. Because I think that's another thing I love about it. The other rhythm games feel artificial to me, and I feel too conscious of what I'm doing. Rhythm Tengoku at its best. You are on a fucking high. You're so much fun, so engaging, and you just lose yourself in the space, and that's when it works. Yeah. If you're too self-conscious when you're playing and you're trying too hard to match stuff up, it ain't gonna work. But it's all visually. The visual feedback's so much more interesting. It's not, that dot I got bad come up. Yeah, great. Yeah. This shit happens. Guy, the karate guy gets hit in the face. Stuff happens that makes you go, ho, and it's all it's really quite visceral stuff. And you're like, this is. Yeah, top stuff. So
excellent.
Sorry to everything else that didn't make it. I'm sad that because I was tempted by Robotron 2084 because I love Robotron, but I'm shit at it. I'm actually really good. I used to be really good at Defender, and I love Defender to bits, and still like it. And Robotron's same, but I was always shit at Robotron, so I thought I could maybe chuck that in there because I could get good at that. But
this is your high score, kind of itch.
Yeah, but I don't think it has the longevity of those 3 I've picked. So I'm really happy with those 3. So this is the bit. Now we're onto the killing bit, which I feel really bad about. I don't like this very much. Because
did you manage to come up with 3? I think you said you had 2. Have you?
I've got 2 definite and 1 that. Well, the first one I came up with that I decided I wasn't going to use, which I'll tell you anyway, was Wipeout, and I really didn't like it at all. I love the styling. I love the universe. I think it's fantastic. I love the idea of it. And then I played it, and it was like fucking pushing a brick around a carpet with some chopsticks. It was awful. The controls on it stink. And then you play Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Oh my God. You see, that's how you make a fucking racing game. Yeah, I nearly put that in there as well, because Mario Kart 8, I don't like Mario Kart. I've never liked it. And then Mario Kart 8 came along. I was kind of like, you know what? I quite like this. I think they just hit a sweet spot for me with that. And then when they did the DX one, I sunk some hours into that as well.
Beautiful looking game as well. Like, see when you do the kind of rewind mode and you can zoom in.
That stuff's incredible.
It's astonishing.
They've just weirdly, again, I think Nintendo is brilliant at learning from itself. They've just added exactly the similar sort of mode into Splatoon 3 from the outset in Splatoon 3. And the replays are fucking awesome. And you can jump between any one of the players, and you can play it, and you can pause, and it's like, oh my fucking God. So good. But yeah, it's not as good as the Mario Kart 8 one, because that slow-mo thing, all the sound slows down. It's like,
that's right, yeah.
The fuck? who does that? It's beautiful. But yeah, Wipeout, I fucking hated that game so much.
So with that, it never quite made it onto the list then?
Well, only because I'm going to put it, I've just realized I'm going to put it on because I've only got 2 that are definitely on the list. So I for the sake of completeness, it's on there. And it just annoyed the hell out of me because not it annoyed me because the styling, all that I can't remember the name of the company, but the styling they did on all the branding, and I think the whole universe, everything about it, I think is fucking brilliant. Apart from playing it, which I think is dog shit, and that combination of everything else being, for me, fantastic and rich, and you know, I really want to play that. I'm like this with Last of Us as well, and Naughty Dog stuff. My kids would be playing maybe Uncharted or something. Like, oh, that looks really good. I want to go. And you pick it up and you go, this is shit. Which brings me on to my first genuine one, which is I want to kill Dragon's Lair, I've decided. And I'm sorry if you like this kind of thing. And that's fine. You're allowed to like it. I'm not going to hate you for liking it. So I realized over the years that of all the games I didn't expect to have legacy and influence was Dragon's Lair. So, and by that I'm thinking, and so wiping this out for me wipes out a lot of games I really don't like playing, and for me they don't embody the point of doing a video game, which is emphasis on play.
Yeah, have fun.
So Dragon's Lair for me was the first game I remember that its emphasis was on story and cinematic presentation. That's it. Play? What play? I mean, it's pretty much just like pressing buttons on a fucking CD player. It's also the first game that did QTEs, as far as I'm concerned. And quick time events can fuck off because they're just the most bollocks of. And again, I found this hard because I don't have that any hate in my heart these days, but it's just the idea that I think life for me would be better. The medium would advance faster without this kind of stuff dragging it down. But equally, I get that there are people who love this stuff, and I get that why should everyone need that richness of play experience? And in theory, surely the beauty of the medium is the fact that it can incorporate all these other multimedia experiences, so to speak. So, you know, I get a lot of games that are visual novels or very story intensive, but for me, they're play light. And for me, that's not the reason for the medium existing.
Yeah.
But equally, I'm an arsehole if I think that nothing else should exist outside of that. But equally, for the spirit of this, I've chosen Dragon's Lair for the reason that killing that, in theory, would mean QTEs would never happen. We'd have fewer games like Wing Commander, Fahrenheit, and all these other fucking tedious story-based, story-heavy, overly cinematic, wannabe filmmaker type fucking games that are shit films, shit games. I don't want any of that stuff. Okay, that's not my fucking jam. So the other way I thought about this was, if you had to force a game on me to play forever, or a type of game that I to play forever on the island, not that. All right. So that's how I made it. That's how I made that decision, based on the fact that I do not fucking want this. So I decided that would have to die, and I'm sorry about that. I regret. For me, this is like killing a wasp, or wiping out the whole concept of wasps, as in, I know that's going to have some serious ramifications somewhere along the line, you know, butterfly effects and all that. But yeah, I can't be fucking doing with that. I fucking hated Dragon's Lair at the time, because by that point I was already into play. I know people who really liked it, but equally the information design, it's fucking awful because you get no cues, no nothing. So at least that's improved. It felt like it's purely there to suck the money out of you because it looked amazing, and you go, it's like a cartoon. It's nothing like a cartoon. It's a shit cartoon. So if you want to watch it, it's shit, and if you want to play it, it's shit. So it just falls between so many stalls. Can't be fucking dealing with that. So that's got to die.
It quite literally had. If Splatoon 3 was the pinnacle of gameplay, Dragon's Lair had fuck all gameplay. It was all about the graphics, and that was it.
And for me, that's had way. I don't know if it's necessarily had the influence I think I'd like to pretend it's had, but there's too much stuff like that that I can't be fucking doing with. I mean, one of my kids absolutely adores visual novels and that kind of game. Knock yourself out. It's just not for me. It's my fucking desert island. So
absolutely, yep. And obviously, without Dragon's Lair, you wouldn't have Dragon's Lair 2 and all the other Space Command.
Yeah, well, my theory was that seed, as I say, would get rid of QTEs. It would get rid of Wing Commander. It would get rid of. I don't like David Cage's stuff at all. I think it's awful. It would just get rid of all those. There were so many of them with CD-ROM. Where they just filled the CD-ROM with really bad CG for a start. So all that stuff looked fucking awful because the rendering back then was because it wasn't stylized. I think again, this is what I love about Japanese games and Nintendo and some others. Mostly, not always, but mostly they will stylize stuff in such a brilliant way that's very appreciative of the limitations of the technology. So something like Cubivore. I don't know if you've seen Cubivore on N64. That's really interesting because that's so fucking stylized. And in fact, similar with it just reminded me of the cinematic sequences you would get in video games. A lot of the Japanese stuff used to reuse what you might call the engine. So you get like early fighter. I used to quite like early Final Fantasy until it became too fucking Dragon's Lair. But they used to use they just reused the game engine for all the cinematic stuff. It was cool. So it all felt consistent and correct.
Yeah.
I hate that jarring, here's the game. And like, this is cool. Whoa, look at that. I don't go, oh, wow, I can project that onto this. I go, oh, it's a separate thing. I don't know. Yeah. I think it's lazy and it just bugs me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at you, Resident Evil on the PlayStation. I mean, the graphics, when you look at them now, are absolutely shit. It plays like shit. And then you get the bit where the zombie turns around and looks at you, oh, that was fucking brilliant. And then it cuts back to the in-game graphics. And it just looks bollocks.
Which completely undermines my argument that most of the Japanese stuff is, anyway. It's just some sort of weird bias, I guess, on my part. I don't know. For me, I think for me, it was growing up over the years and seeing English or British games, not English games, British games, and then Japanese games. They seem to have a lot in common in terms of this weird experimentalism that's going on. The American games, for example, always felt much more. They're on a different scale and more grandiose, but they're kind of lacking some of the heart. I think maybe because the teams were bigger. I don't know, but I don't know. There's a sincerity. I'm probably just projecting. Anyway, my third kill is an interesting one, and I could not figure out reasons why you might want to kill stuff. Oh, the cat wants to go out. There you go. So I decided I'm gonna go radical here and pick something that I was worked on and has been significant because I'm intrigued to know what would happen if it didn't exist.
And you worked in this game?
I did. I worked on the first two anyway. This is GTA. So I'm going to kill GTA because I'm curious to know what will happen because it's so big, so influential. And it's not this bad. It's just, what would happen if you got rid of that? and that fascinates me to think. So it was different reasoning behind the reason for killing this. It wasn't dislike. It was just morbid curiosity that what happens if you kill something so significant? Because it's clearly massively fucking significant. And it was born of the first two are insignificant by comparison to what it became. But they wouldn't have existed without it. So in some respects, they're almost like something that's crawling out of a primordial soup. Without them doing that, the majestic beasts that roam the earth these days that do over 100 million sales would not exist. However, so that in itself made me think, what if we got rid of that? What would be the implications of getting rid of that? Because you lose a lot. You lose that. I mean, also, I don't know about you, but do you often wonder whether if you get rid of one thing, would something else find a way anyway? Because I've seen this over the years with people I've met where you sit with ideas and you talk to people, industry people in pubs or whatever, and everyone seems to have a lot of people have a lot of similar ideas. It's amazing how a lot of ideas that seem unique are not as unique as you might think they are. Yeah. And but it's some people I mentioned earlier about doing stuff and finishing stuff. Some people actually do something with the thing, and it's all for me. There's a great degree of serendipity and zeitgeist attached to this, where it happens to be the right person in the right place at the right time with the right thinking. Blah 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 blah. And I saw it with GTA 3. It was an amazing experience to watch internally, firsthand. where you've got this fantastic sequence of events occurring where the way the company DMA restructured, Rockstar got involved with their attitude, and it genuinely felt like planets aligning. You've got 2 versions done that kind of set the tone. You've got this third one, this leap into 3D. You've got the Silicon Valley, core of the Silicon Valley team, Silicon Valley, Space Station Silicon Valley, not the DMA game, who are incredibly fucking talented coming onto this thing. And it's just like, fucking hell, look at this. What is good? And then it comes out, of course, and you're like, holy shit. And I'd left by that point, but it was the most amazing thing to see. Yeah, and the timing was right. Everything about it was right, you know?
Yeah.
And you can't manufacture that stuff, but it doesn't mean it wasn't it doesn't mean it wasn't sincere. It doesn't mean there wasn't ability involved, but you just cannot manufacture that stuff. And also knowing how close to not coming out the first one was, that also made me think, yeah, what if you killed this thing? What would that mean? Because the first one was so fucking close. You know, what if when I was at BMG, I didn't fight to save it? And I'm not saying I was the only reason, but I was certainly part of what kept it going, because someone's kind of fighting for it. But equally, I was nothing in the bigger picture, so someone could have easily overridden that. So I find that a fascinating exercise to think, yeah, what if you killed that thing? What would you be left with? And you're thinking about these big holes of that type of game that didn't exist, and that kind of open world. It normalized open world play. I'm sure it would have come through somewhere else, because there is that kind of Darwinian quality to it where it's going to come from something else, isn't it? It must do. It's just, you don't ever have the luxury of being able to see if these two, in theory, video games should give you that luxury. But
yeah, they were coming in parallel or whatever. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't get to see what would happen if, and then what would happen? How would these things play out? So that's my third one, just for shits and gigs, really.
It's interesting. I mean, when you think about it, I suppose there's always going to be the first game that does that. I mean, Doom, for example, was third-person shooters, as you say.
Which it's interesting because both GTA and Doom, they weren't the first, but they were the most. They were that tipping point, as it were. There were other. Even I remember even on ZX81, Monster Maze. I know it's not quite the same thing, but that sense of being trapped in a maze, which is Wolfenstein, and shooting at stuff. There have been other games since. That, and it was Phantom Zone on the Dragon. That was a maze-based shooty thing, and there were other ones, but they weren't quite the same. Yeah. It's those little degrees of iteration and improvement that occur when someone does this thing and takes this thing, and the right coder is in the right place at the right time, and he's got Carmack's got the vision to be able to go, I'm going to do this thing, and someone's going, oh, we could leverage it to do this thing. It's that I mentioned Dreamers earlier. It's that it's not that isolation. A dreamer in isolation. You've got a dreamer and a fucking talented doer who can turn. It goes, but not even that. It's the fact that they are synced enough to be able to say, I can take the dream and I can actually fucking turn that into a reality.
Yeah, and it's something. Yeah,
that's rare, and that's not shit that you just. That doesn't happen through some sort of divine manifestation. I mean, it's pure luck that shit happens, and if it wasn't them, it'd be someone else. But you wouldn't know it was someone else because you'd never know of the alternative because you've gone down that path, if you sort of mean. I find that fascinating that it is that simple. And as I say, it's born out of the fact that I've had conversations with so many developing type people over the years, and it's astonishing how many similar ideas float around.
So you'd quite literally pick Grand Theft Auto just to see how it would actually affect.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on my island at that point, so I probably would never know, but
yeah. Well,
I just find that fascinating.
You do know that Ian Gray of Interceptor Software, he was ahead of the curveball with Siren City. Play that game and come back to me and tell me that's not Grand Theft Auto.
And there were a few like that. It wasn't the only one. No, I agree. It was. It's that kind of proto. I don't know how much of an influence they had, if any. Probably not, because I know Syndicate fed into GTA original one quite a bit, as did Elite as well. So Elite's one of those first, early. Yeah. That's Elite was such a clever illusion. I mean, fucking hell. You look at that now and like, is that it? But it's not. When you were there and you were into it, it was everything.
Yeah.
And it's just a few fucking circles and some triangles and some dots. It's like, what the fuck? There's an entire universe in that thing. And even Mercenary was similar with that sense of it being like a real fucking space. It was just enough He picked on the right stuff to sort of represent that would convince you that what was going on, and it was enough at the time to kind of get into it. And I was massively into Mercenary. I remember playing that to absolute fucking death. Yeah, I'm assuming if I look back now, it's just a bunch of green open space with the occasional white line on it. But
awesome. So your three choices. What was that again? Obviously, Wipeout. Was that pretty much because did it over deliver? Sorry, did it over promise and under deliver, or was it just the shit controls?
Because there've been so many games over the years that have done this to me where I look at it and go, oh man, and I've got this image in my head. And particularly with Wipeout, where it was obvious what it was going to be. You know, it's a racing game. You're like, oh, cool. Can't wait to. So, but because Daytona was around the same time, I think. And Daytona on Saturn was actually really good. In fact, we used to play Daytona on Saturn at BMG a lot, because the consoles came out at the same time. I went for Saturn rather than PlayStation because you had a choice of N64, Saturn, and PlayStation, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
I had an N64 anyway. It was a given. And then it was a case of which other one I'm going to tinker with. So you had the Saturn. I was never really much of a Mega Drive person. I had a Mega Drive, loads of games. I did a lot of work on Mega Drive, but mainly for manuals and stuff like that. So I got the Saturn, and the Saturn version of Daytona was fucking great, but only the first track. And we used to play that because it was short and it was a loop, and we used to play this brilliant turnabout thing again where it's like, oh, go on, oh, fuck. And of course, you got this. It was first level of Sonic was the same when Sonic came out. I didn't like Sonic much at all. Actually, Sonic was on there as well for the same reason.
Not fun.
I don't like Sonic at all. It's just so hollow. But apart from we had a brilliant time. But I guess this is how people work, and multiplayer brings out the best in things sometimes. We just played that first level of Sonic over and over again to see who could do it fastest. It was as simple as that, or get the best score. I can't remember what the rules were, but it was such a childlike, old-fashioned thing to do, where you're just sitting around together, around the telly, making up the rules, ignoring the real game. Because that's what you do. I don't care. Real game shit. We're just gonna make our own rules up here and have fun with, the toys, basically. So there were. I know there are plenty of others out there. It's just Wipeout was the only one that sprung to mind as a major disappointment because of the fact that what it presented, the style and all that stuff, the universe just looked fantastic. And it should have been. I should have picked it up and gone, oh, cool, I am in this universe. And I didn't. I went, it's horrible. And it just takes you out. It's like bad control. It's like when you sometimes get animation driving when you're playing a game and the animation is overriding the physical control. It's like, no, the physical control should always override the animation. It just tore me out of it completely, which is massive disappointment, I guess, more than anything else. Dragon's Lair, because I was trying to think of something that would have of a game type that I would not want to be stuck with on this island. Therefore, that will be a good candidate for killing. And what started it all, probably not Dragon's Lair, but it felt like I can trace it back. So that's good enough.
Yeah.
and then GTA just for some weird sort of scientific curiosity thing. But of course, we wouldn't know, because if it wiped out, you'd never know of its existence. Therefore, you would never know. Although on my island of bubbles, so my island bubble would be brilliant, because I could study it from afar through maybe some magical means and decide, I knew what happened when GTA happened, and now I can see. And none of you know, because I'm on this fucking island playing my 3 brilliant games over and over again forever.
Excellent. Listen, before I let you go, Gary, I just want to ask your thoughts on one last game. And one of my mates actually picked this. He just thought it was a crushing disappointment. Mario 64. What's your take on that?
At the time, massively into it, and I finished it and got all the red coins? 120 something, I think. Maybe 120. Yeah, at the time, brilliant. You go back to that. Oh my God, it's awful. I remember first showing it to my kids, and it was embarrassing. It was almost like showing them embarrassing pictures of you as a kid almost. It was terrible. It played badly. It looked mank as fuck, because there's hardly anything in there.
That's what he said. He says there's nothing there. He says it's just all bareness.
But it's one of these. I think it's one of these things where, as you get older and you play stuff over the years, and I a good example for me was always something like a racing game, where there was a point in my life, and it seems ridiculous to say it, that pole position looked real. And it's only because relative of what came before, it was like, wow, look how cool that looks. That's just like a real fucking racing thing. It's just compared to what came before, it looks... And Mario 64 was like that. So at the time, and I think there are some fantastically clever game ideas in there. And structurally, it's very clever with the way you use the paintings to get around. There's got the hub, which was... the whole idea of a hub was kind of unusual at the time. I can't remember what else did that kind of thing before. But you had a playable hub. You had things like the controls were, at the time, really interesting. It was 3D, which was in itself unusual. You had the analog sticks, which in themselves...
And you could pan around with the camera, which was kind of first as well, wasn't it?
I think a lot of that... I think... having lived through it, I think we had the Japanese one as well, so we didn't even know the text. It's definitely of its time, and relatively speaking, it was significant. But why it still appears, well, I guess it should appear in lists as something that is of significance, but it needs to be clarified as to why it's significant, because it's not very good now. And I was stunned by how bad it was when I went back to it. It was before we had kids, actually. I went back to it. I'm trying to think why I went back to it. I think I might have dug out the N64 or something. I can't remember. I thought, the other funny thing about the N64 was how bad a lot of the textures are. Fucking hell.
It's the one console. To be fair, apart from this, I mean, I bought a PlayStation, and I've never used it in years.
PlayStation games have not aged very well.
Aged horrendously. And N64 games are exactly the same.
Yeah.
The Sega Saturn, brilliant. I've got one underneath the TV there, and it's fantastic. But the early 3D games look absolutely dog shit now. They really do. They're fucking awful.
Yeah. I just think Cubivore was interesting because it uses really crude shapes deliberately, which is good. And I was watching, I don't know why I was watching it. It was a YouTube video of it was Japanese exclusives on, might have been PlayStation? I forget what it was. It was just interesting to watch. I know what it was. It was a rabbit hole thing. You're doing a thing, you're going blah, 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 and what's that? And you click on the link, and before you know, you're sucked into this thing. There was a whole bunch of exclusives PlayStation 1 games that were only in Japan. Really variable. But some of them were really, and considering how old they were, actually, I think, used the limitations extremely well. I can't remember what they were. Some of them were fighting games. Some of them were just fucking awful. Actually, most of them were fucking awful. There were a few sort of pixel-based ones which didn't look so bad, but anything that was polygonal, oof. Virtua Fighter was a different one. I liked Virtua Fighter because it deliberately had like wood-carved characters almost. They weren't meant to be, but and there was that beautiful move you did was, I think it was just a Jeffrey, and you would jump up and down on the guy's back, and it was the most unpleasant, because you had all the stuff with Mortal Kombat that came out that was very bloody. But it was never as nasty as some of the moves that Jeffrey did on other characters. I think it was Jeffrey.
He was the guy with the beard. They became a ponytail thing, I think.
You jump on the back and you're like, fucking hell, that feels really unpleasant. It was quite a good game, actually, Virtua Fighter. I remember enjoying it.
Awesome. Listen, Gary, I have taken up quite enough of your time.
Likewise, I think. I've just got a battery low on my little earpiece as well.
Listen, mate, it's been an absolute privilege having you on. I mean, you're a big name in the retro scene. You're a big ambassador for it. You love it to bits, and people love listening to what you've got to say about it. And I feel particularly honoured that you've chosen to come on this local channel of Minds. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you ever want to come on for a live waffle or whatever it is, you've ever wanted us to talk pish about video games, just give me a wee shout, mate.
It's really kind. You made me feel really uncomfortable now. Thank you. I appreciate it. But no, I appreciate it sincere. It's just, thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, and Gary. And finally, folks, as always, thank you very much for listening and for watching. Cheers, guys.
Okay.
Cheers, Gary. See you, mate.
Bye.
Bye.